Assembly meeting of January the 9th, 2018. First time we met this year. Welcome, my friends. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance. Here. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Croft. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Demboski.
Present.
Mr. Dyson. Chair Trainee, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Dyson, could you listen to the pledge, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. There are no minutes of previous meetings. The clerk's efficient, and they're all caught up. Mayor's report, Mr. Mayor.
Happy New Year and nothing to report.
Okay. Let's see, Assembly Chair's report. There's really no report except I took off to Mexico, and I appreciate you guys not burning the town down or slowing it while I was gone. Appreciate that. It was odd. We thought when the kids gave us a gift of a cruise to Mexico, it was one way. Didn't know they had a round-trip ticket. Although they gave us T-shirts that said "Cruising Together," had a picture of a boat. One of my grandsons wrote the Titanic on it. I can't figure out why. Anyway, it was an interesting time period. Let's go to items to be committee reports. We'll start with you, Mr. Wilton.
Thank you. We've had some turmoil on AMATs that I caused. I apologize to anyone who's frustrated with that, but I've been talking for a while about the way that we weight the various road projects that we do using federal money, and I'm trying to get it so it's more attentive to neighborhoods and to speeding in our neighborhoods and to kind of our larger community plans. And that seems to send some things in disarray. We will get that fixed, but if you hear something about that, it'll be A-okay in the end. I went and visited the Planning and Zoning Commission yesterday to coordinate with the Community and Economic Development Committee, and that went very well. We'll have kind of some plans to do some annual meetings when they get their annual plan set up, and also to thank them for the really tremendous work they did on the land use plan that made our lives very easy. So they were glad to hear that. It's a really good group of people we have on that commission now. And you will be hearing much on marijuana, a couple applications, a couple changes, and then also we'll be having a public hearing on some changes to the our regulations that will that we went through twice already on the Community and Economic Development Committee. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we will have our regularly scheduled homelessness committee meeting next Wednesday, January 17th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at City Hall. That's all to report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have on the ballot tonight, or on the agenda tonight, a discussion of a ballot measure to put to the voters a question of the sale of ML&P. And it's a big ticket item and something I'm looking forward to seeing through. So, thank you.
That's going to keep your committee awful busy, isn't it? Of course, then we can get rid of that committee once we get rid, MLP's gone.
One less utility.
Yep. Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Transportation Committee met last week and discussed the new taxi ordinance that Mr. Gates, our municipal attorney, or I'm sorry, our assembly attorney, has been working very hard on. The plan is to introduce that ordinance for introduction on the 23rd of January, and then probably discuss it at a work session, and perhaps also at the Transportation Committee, which isn't yet scheduled, but will probably be held next month. So something to look forward to. We continue to work on an ordinance that will resolve some of the issues left outstanding after the two ordinances that were passed relating to taxis last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, sorry for being late. The
The Public Safety Committee met on the 3rd. We've had a number of packed meetings before that. The last 3 or 4 had really been packed with such content. We only had one issue on this agenda, which was felony prosecutions. The municipality prosecutes misdemeanors, that is anything punishable with less than a year up to a year. And we would typically, when we find a crime that looked like a misdemeanor, but we realize it's a felony, we would send it to the district attorney's office. And over the last year, most of them have been sent back. We think primarily because of budget cuts. So it was a discussion of how can we either step into that void, prosecute felonies ourselves, have a cooperative agreement, or get more prosecutions from the state with their fiscal situation. We worked through a lot of those ideas. It was a good discussion. I believe if we can put it together, we'll have another a double meeting this month. That is one on the 17th as well, probably refocusing again on opiate addiction.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ethics and Elections Committee will be having our monthly meeting on this Friday, January 12th, and that's actually sooner than normal. We've got a couple of things we need to take a look at, plus I'm going to be going on vacation in the last part of the month, so this looked like the best date when we might be able to all get together. That's going to be at 2:30 p.m. in room 240 at City Hall. And we're going to be going over a communication plan for the vote-by-mail election coming in April. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a committee report, but I would like a moment of privilege to talk about a homeless issue briefly.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As most of you know, I'm loud and clear when I have a problem with the way things are going in relationship to homelessness in the north of town, but I have a rare opportunity to speak highly the praises of the homeless coordinator, APD and AFD, who at this time are implementing a new system at the homeless shelter. I received a bunch of email complaints from a number of my neighbors about how the camps had suddenly moved, and so I investigated, and I drove around all the areas where folks were complaining, and there was a little bit of a problem, but what blew me away was when I drove onto the campus of Beans and Brother Francis, and the CAP team was stationed there, and as they will be for the next 2 weeks, with a member of AFD and also with a social worker, mental health clinician. And for the first time in a dozen years, I was on that campus at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and there was peace in every direction. And so I am really appreciative of the efforts of everybody involved, Nancy Burke, the homeless coordinator, the chief, the mayor and his team. And so thank you to everybody. And on the converse of that, at a community council last night, I heard the spokesperson of the ACLU state that the assembly and the municipality have a crackdown going on homelessness in the camps, to which I responded very bluntly that he was misinforming the community. And so, you know, there's never all good, but thank you very much to this administration for their real direct work that's improving the quality of life in that part of town.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By way of disclosure, I have no community report, but I do have a couple of disclosures to make. And one I'm going to make because I think I've made it before, but I can't remember. So I'm just going to do it again.
Do it again.
All right. So the first one is 9 Bravo 5, Resolution AR 2018-15. It's for the purchase of a new fire truck. I think it's to replace a ladder truck, I believe. And then there's item 14B, which is AO 2017-169, which is for fire protection capital improvement and related capital improvement in the Anchorage Fire Service area. And then there is an item in which I actually am sponsoring. It's item 9F10, which is on the addendum, which is a ballot question for the residents of Eagle River Valley to ask them if they want to come into the Anchorage Fire Service area. I make the disclosure because my husband is a member of the Anchorage Fire Department and IAFF Local 1264. I don't believe any of the items in front of us will have a direct impact on him, and I believe he's a small class within a larger class. I think it's de minimis, but I do make the disclosure for you and the body to consider any potential conflict.
I appreciate that, man. Given past rulings on that, I really do not have a conflict of interest. That's consistent with the board that we went to and we heard from them. Your part of this is de minimis, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think I didn't pull it, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but just to be on the record, there is one for the Girdwood Fire Service area today, and it's the same thing. I don't think there's any issue.
Is there anything else you want to discuss other than that?
I'll wait till member comments at the very end.
Okay. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Nothing to report.
Okay. We're now down to addendum to the agenda. Mr. Dunbar, I'll need a motion to incorporate the addendum to the agenda and lay it on table items, sir.
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda and lay it on the table items.
I need a second. Second. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
All right. So we have
That's
quite
water. You ready to go?
quite a few tonight. All right. Resolution 9A2, resolution number AR, I'm sorry, that's laid on the table. Start with addendum. Resolution 9A1, resolution number AR 2018-18, resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the Nordic Skiing Association of Anchorage for hosting the 2018 U.S. Cross Country Ski Championships. Assembly Chair Traney, Assembly Vice Chair Dunbar, Assembly Members Constant, Croft, Domboski, Dyson, LaFrance, Peterson, Rivera, Steele, Weddleton, and Mayor Berkowitz. Item 9D17, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 35-2018, Anchorage Equal Rights Commission appointment, Darrell W. Hess, Mayor's Office. Item 9D18, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 36-2018, Bidding Review Board appointments, Paul Michelson Jr., Scott A. Boney, and Tim M. Sullivan Sr., Mayor's Office. Item 9D19, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 37-2018, Eagle River Chugach Park and Recreation Service Area Board of Supervisors appointments, Peter J. Panarisi and Joshua T. Ream, Mayor's Office. Item 9F8, resolution number AR 2018-11, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $2.3 million from the 2018 Equipment Maintenance Internal Services Operating Fund 601 unrestricted net assets account to the 2018 Equipment Maintenance Interval Service Capital Fund 606 to purchase replacement vehicles and equipment, all within the Maintenance and Operations Department. Public hearing on 1/23/2018, accompanied by 9FA 8A, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 11-2018. Item 9F9, Ordinance Number AO 2018-2, an ordinance authorizing an additional 3-month lease with Beans Cafe Incorporated for the operation of a nighttime overflow shelter. Department of Law, public hearing 1/23/2018, accompanied by 9F9A, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 38-2018. Item 9F10, Ordinance Number AO 2018-3, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly submitting to the qualified voters of the Anchorage Fire Service area and of the Eagle River Valley area not currently within a fire service area, a ballot proposition to annex the Eagle River Valley area to the AFSA, and if approved, then amending Anchorage Municipal Code sections 2730-050 and 2730-700 accordingly. Assembly Member Domboski. Public hearing 1/23/2018. Item 9F11, Ordinance Number AO 2018-4, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 828, Elections, to implement voting by mail and make other changes to related municipal elections, and providing for a retroactive effective date. Assembly Chair Traney. Public hearing 1/23/2018, accompanied by 9F11A, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 39-2018. Laid on the table items. Item 9A2, Resolution Number AR 2018-19, Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly designating January 15, 2018 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, encouraging volunteerism and recognizing community service projects honoring the legacy of Dr. King. Assembly Member Rivera, Chair Traney, Vice Chair Dunbar, Members Constant, Croft, Domboski, Dyson, LaFrance, Peterson, Steele, Weddleton, and Mayor Berkowitz. Resolution for action, other. Item 9B7, Resolution Number AR 2018-21, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly stating its expectations for Chugach Electric Association to work with Matanuska Electric Association to ensure MEA customers within the municipality benefit from cost savings and power reliability as CEA proceeds with steps to purchase municipal light and power. Assembly Members Croft, Domboski, and Dyson. Item 9B8, Resolution Number AR 2018-22, a resolution adopting the 2018 legislative program for the municipality of Anchorage Anchorage, Mayor's Office. Item 9F12, Resolution Number AR 2018-20, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating and adopting the 2017 Supplemental Emergency Services Grant ESG of $133,348 and 2013 Substantial Amendment Number 4, 2015 Non-Substantial Amendment Number 1, 2016 Substantial Amendment Number 3, and 2017 Substantial Amendment Number 1 to the Federal Grant Fund 241900 on the housing and community development years of 2013, 2015, 2016, and 2017 HUD action plans for the Department of Health and Human Services. Public hearing 1/23/2018, accompanied by 9F12A, Assembly Memorandum Number AM 20/2018. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any laid on table items anybody has that we don't have? Okay, is there any objection to the approval of the addendum to the agenda and laid on the table items? There is no objection, Madam Clerk. We've incorporated that into our agenda. Next, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay, we're now going to go back to those items that need pulled for further discussion. Mr. Dyson, I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you. 9E1, please.
You got your sheet? Okay. Is that all, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Ms. Nabowski,
9 Delta 16.
9 Delta 16?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you. 9D12, Delta.
9 Delta 12? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9 Bravo 8, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Croft, sir.
Nothing to pull, thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
No items.
Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm, 9 Delta 16 has been pulled, correct? Right.
9 Delta 16 was pulled by Ms. Nabowski.
Thank you.
Mr. Steele.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 9 Alpha 2 for reading.
Mr. Wilton.
9 Alpha 1 reading.
Okay. Let's go over, Madam Clerk. We've got item 9A1 was pulled by Mr. Wilton. Item 9A2 was pulled by Mr. Rivera. 9B8 was pulled by Mr. Peterson. Item 9D12 was pulled by Mr. Constant. Item 9D16 was pulled by Ms. Nabowski. Item 9E1 was pulled by Mr. Dyson. That completes it. Okay. Let's go ahead and vote then. Please vote. That's approved 11-0. Notice the system is working so far. Not to jinx it, but hey, I'll take every vote as a win, okay? Doesn't always happen. Okay, the first item is item 9A1. Mr. Wilton, you pulled
Move
that
to
one.
approve.
Second.
Mr. Wilton, go ahead.
Where's that?
Yeah.
So,
Let's ask unanimous consent on that one.
yep.
Seeing no objection, that is approved. Mr. Wilton?
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the Nordic Skiing Association of Anchorage for hosting the 2018 U.S. Cross Country Ski Championships. Whereas for 53 years, the Nordic Skiing Association of Anchorage has provided trail grooming and cross-country skiing and healthy outdoor opportunities in Anchorage. And whereas in 1983, NSAA assumed trail maintenance and grooming for most of Anchorage's soft surface trails with the help of contributions and volunteer labor. And whereas from December 30th, 2017 to January 9, 2018, NSAA hosted the 2018 U.S. Cross Country Ski Championships. And whereas the races gave skiers consideration for the 2018 Winter Olympics. And whereas this event brought over 500 national racers and coaches along with their families, more than 200 community volunteers, hundreds of spectators, sponsorships from over 35 businesses, and an economic impact of over $2 million. And whereas Kincaid Park's snowmaking capabilities allowed the city to host this event by turning 4.3 million gallons of water and 658 volunteer hours into ski trails. And whereas snowmaking is also used by recreational skiers and families, programs such as ASD Racing, Junior Nordic Program, and other organizations. And now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that the Nordic Skiing Association of Anchorage is recognized and honored for their contribution to the quality of life and economic growth of Anchorage. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 9th day of January, 2018.
Thank you. We'd like to say a few words. Chairman Trainee, Mayor Berkowitz, and all the Assembly members. My name is Joey Caternicchio. I'm the current president of the Nordic Ski Association, and I was the chair for the event for the U.S. Nationals. This is my partner in crime, Matt Pauley. He was the chief of competition. We wanted to come here with the A-team here. We brought 4 national champions who just won on our home course advantage. They will say a few words in just a minute. One swept every single national event here and all local kids, and we do this for them. The one thing we also want to recognize is we also have our volunteers in the audience. Every single person, 200 of them, came together to host, in conjunction with the city, John Rada, we had Brad Cook, all the NSA board, and then all of our volunteers that were made up of school district, the Old Green Grunts, they were wearing blue this time, and everybody matched out there working together to have this. A couple things not in the resolution I think is important is we did some upgrades to Kincaid. For the first time we had internet. We live streamed the event. 88,000 viewers, new viewers watched, and they showcased our city, which was worldwide, and that's impressive for little old Anchorage. We're world-class trails with a world-class community, and it's important with our partnership with you guys to continue to host these events, and it was a really proud moment. I think we're all a little tired. We're still cleaning up today, but it was great. This event took over a year to plan, and most importantly, over 6,000 volunteer hours just for the week of the event. Lori Bassett was our volunteer coordinator. I don't see her here, but I'd like to give her part of our A-team. Is she here? She's sitting. And there's so many to name, but there are a few. Josh Neva and Elizabeth also did our media, which also helped get it down. Right now, I would like our national champions to introduce themselves and just a quick hello, because these guys are somebody's gonna be at the Olympics in the either next Olympics or our future, and these 4 right here are our future. We also have our Junior Nordic one more time, right over here. Junior Nordic is 700, about 1,400 kids a year, plus high school and middle school then comes up from there producing these national champions. And it's important that it just is great for our city, the community, the trails, our recreation. It's not about racing, but the cool part is this event was just plain cool, and we thank you for allowing us to have it. I'd like to bring up Reese Hanneman, national champion this week.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Joey. Assembly and Mayor, thanks for having us. It was, I think, this past week of racing, the event at Kincaid really kind of sums up a lot of what Anchorage is about. It's just an incredible, like we say, it's an incredible place to live, work, play, and I think there's a number of aspects that really just embody Anchorage and Alaska as a whole. There's so many people out watching, from tiny little kids, sledding in between races, all the way up to, grandparents and even great-grandparents out there. And so it's just that community that we have. I remember being that little kid looking up at the big old guys racing at Kincaid Park. I've raced there, my whole life. And here now to win 2 national titles in a week on those same trails is really cool. And the volunteers, I think that's another part of our community that's just so amazing. People love to be active, to be outside, the skiing, and just to spend time together. It was beautiful. Denali was popping out. We have a teammate who joined us they're from California originally, and I heard somebody made a comment like, oh yeah, there were too many volunteers actually. We didn't know what to do with them, so we kind of, we found these extraneous roles for them to play because we had so many volunteers. She said, wow, that's such an Alaskan problem. Like, nowhere else do you ever have that problem. So I thought that was really cool, and that kind of just summed up our event, and it was really cool to show off to all the lower 48ers what we got up here. So,
Thank you. Come forward.
Hello, thank you for having us. My name is Caitlin Patterson, and I swept all 4 national titles this week. And thank you. I attended South Anchorage High School, and so I skied for the South team, and coming back here to Kincaid Park and racing was just amazing, and especially to have so much success. It was great to see the community coming out, and as we said, all the generations from Junior Nordic up to our volunteers who have so much history with the park, and to see so many spectators is definitely among the best attended nationals I've ever been to, and it was great to see just the whole Anchorage city and community of skiing come together for the race, and certainly to showcase such a good event and have all of our teammates and fellow competitors praising Alaska, commenting on its beauty, and sharing, so that hopefully their friends and family will come up and visit as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Scott Patterson. That's my sister. I'd just like to say that, as previously, we had 8 national titles this week, and all 8 of them had Anchorage connections. I think also with the junior trips, as reflected with Gus, we had an extreme concentration of junior athletes. And that's just reflecting on, one, the strength of the Anchorage community, both where it is now and where we're going, from junior Nordic all through the elite levels to masters. I think Anchorage is one of the leading communities for cross-country skiing, and events like this make that continue. So, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, sir.
So, yeah, I'm Gus Schumacher. I won 2 of the junior races this week, and I just want to talk about how important these big races are. I remember not that long ago they were here, 2010, I think. These nationals were here, and I was about 10. And I remember watching every race, every sprint heat, going from place to place in the stadium, watching all these, Keegan Randall was huge. She won every race, I think, back then. And that's a huge part of why I'm skiing now. And I think it's super important for, the junior skiers and everyone in the community to see these good athletes, these good local athletes doing well. And I think it's super cool, Scott said, 8 of the 12 World Junior qualifiers have Anchorage connections, like UAA or grown up here. I think that's huge, and I just want to thank you all for supporting that. I think it's so important to our community and for people living here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I love skiing, and I have so much fun going out to all the races and getting to cheer on all the people. And I got to hand out awards to all of the winners, and I just had so much fun, and I was so glad that the nationals got hosted at Kincaid this year. It was a lot of fun.
And again, thank you, and we look forward to doing this again. So have a great meeting.
This item in front of us is item 9A2. It was pulled, Mr. Rivera. It's AR 2018-19.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. I thought they just did. Okay, sorry, they didn't appear on here. Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
It was the only one that
This is a pleasure. I've been skiing Anchorage's cross-country trails for over 50 years. 25 years ago, 2 of my daughters were very competitive. Now one of my grandsons is. And a few weeks ago, when I was looking at budget amendments, one of the things that stood out is I don't know of a user group that does a better job of volunteers in preparing and maintaining the trails than this gang has done. And indeed, we have become not the, but a world-class producer of cross-country skiers, both classic and freestyle. And it's something to be proud of. And in my view, kind of one of the crown jewels of our city that's pretty darn cheap. And we ought to be really glad for both the athletes we're producing and the quality of people who support this marvelous recreational opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Wilton, I'm sorry to have missed you earlier.
That's fine. I just brought in a couple things. One, Gus Schumacher was here, who won some junior national championships. However, he was hanging in there with the older guys. You know, in the long race, he came in, I think, 13th, but he was in the pack with the top guys. Absolutely amazing. He's 17. And, you know, their top guys are 10 years older than him. And also shout out for the old guys. John Muka, 58 years old, one of my arch rivals, raced in there. It was really exciting to watch him in there. Didn't hang like Gus did, but he was in there. It was really amazing. And Reese Hahnemann, I was on 20 years ago on a relay at World Masters with his dad, and we were 8th in the world out of 10.
You know, John, when you think about Alaska, though, we're so lucky to live here because some people fly hours to get good snow. Here, we grew up with it. You know, and we should produce champions from this state, and are, because we've got a perfect environment for it here. Wonderful place for us to live. But thanks for bringing this forward, John. Appreciate it. Next item in front of us will be AR 2018-19. Mr. Rivera, you pulled that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve.
Second. Ask unanimous consent, seeing no objection, that's approved. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly.
Reading it, do you know?
No.
I do not believe anyone is here to receive it, so I'll just be reading it.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly designating January 15th, 2018 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, encouraging volunteerism and recognizing community service projects honoring the legacy of Dr. King. Whereas in 1983, a federal holiday was created marking the birthday of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and in 1994, the third Monday in January was designated as a National Day of Service and is the only federal holiday observed as a National Day of Service, a day on, not a day off. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is a part of United We Serve, the President's National Call to Service initiative, which encourages Americans from all walks of life to work together to provide solutions to our most pressing national problems. And whereas MLK Day of Service is a perfect opportunity for Americans to honor Dr. King's legacy and through volunteerism empower individuals, strengthen communities, bridge barriers, create solutions to social problems, and move us all closer to his vision of a beloved community. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And each year, Americans across the country answer that question by coming together on this day to serve their neighbors and communities. And whereas participation in the MLK Day of Service has grown nationally, and volunteers from across the country have taken part in various service projects such as tutoring and mentoring, preparing and delivering meals, building and repairing homes, schools, and senior centers, as well as teaching and reflecting on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas the municipality of Anchorage joins in the celebration of public service by encouraging volunteerism and recognizing community service projects honoring Dr. King's legacy. And whereas in November, on January 24th, 2018, the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commemoration Program, hosted by the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation of Alaska, will be held at West Anchorage High School. This collaborative, free community effort promises to be inclusive, enriching, entertaining, and educational for the entire family. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that January 15th, 2018 is designated as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in the municipality of Anchorage. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 9th day of January, 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Mr.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
I just want to know for the record, there's just a scrivener's error in there that January 14th instead of January 15th on line 35, so if we could make that correction. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton, sir. Okay. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yep, thank you. Just of note for folks who live in, or not really who live, who are lower income, the Alaska Bar Association does an annual day of service at the Mountain View Rec Center from 12 to 5:30 on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, where they're going to be providing free pro bono legal advice, civil legal advice to people who have needs. So if you know someone or your neighbors need some help, the Bar Association will be providing a clinic that day at the, I believe it's Clark Elementary School or Mountain View Boys and Girls Club, at the Mountain View Boys and Girls Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think it's important to remember this holiday annually because dramatic change we've seen in our lifespan in this country. Many of it is directly related to the feet of Dr. King, so we need to remember what he did for this country. A great American. So if you have a chance, do something on this day to help the public. Thanks for this coming forward. Appreciate it, Felix. Next item was pulled is item 9B18.
No, 8.
8. Let's shift over to 8. Sorry.
Legislative program.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson, you pulled that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move to
Why don't you make a
postpone.
motion, move to approve first, then a second.
Move to approve.
Second.
Now, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move to postpone until our next meeting on January 23rd, please.
Get a motion to postpone this to January 23rd.
Second.
Mr. Peterson?
We've started with some amendments. We have several amendments now, and when there's others that we're working on that we think a little more time would allow us to make some improvements to those amendments. And so, and the administration is on board with this, so I think the 23rd will be just fine.
Okay. Would everybody make sure if this passes to postpone this that you get any amendments you've got in the clerk's office? So on the 23rd, we're not dealing with this. We've got all the amendments in there ahead of time, please.
Right.
We appreciate it. Is there any objection to this? Move to postpone this item to the 23rd?
Thank you.
Seeing none, that's approved, Madam Clerk, by the body. Next item in front of us will be item 9D12, pulled by Mr. Constant. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to move to approve.
Second.
Need a second. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. Reading through the packet, I came to the Gaslight Lounge licensee, and there was a notice of violation in there, and there was a back and forth in the conversation. The violation was a claim that there was someone intoxicated in their bar. They responded back to the AMCO that they blamed it on the APD, and then there was no resolution noted in the packet. And so I'm wondering if there's anyone out there who knows how this was resolved, or if it was. Mandy. So I don't have an answer to that question, and it's kind of disconcerting to me to not know.
Did you ask our clerk ahead of time that handles these licenses, Mr.
Yeah,
Constant?
in fact, I didn't, and that is my fault. I just had been pretty darn busy this weekend. But so it's page 304. No, it's not page 304.
Page what? Mr. Constant, it's
I'll find it for you one
numbers
sec.
at the bottom of the page.
Yep. My note page got swept out of my packet on the way here, so.
Mr. Chair, if you're looking for the response letter from the owner of Gaslight, that's on page 281.
276, 278, 281. and then it stops. It doesn't answer how it was resolved. Is it possible, then, I would like to move to divide these items,
Move to bifurcate.
move to bifurcate?
Second. And just
Move to bifurcate the issues.
Yep.
Is there any objection to bifurcation? What that does is it allows us to deal with each one separately. Is there any objection? Not seeing the objection.
For the record, for sure, that it's for license number 1043, because there were several in that packet.
1043 is
Sorry,
Bruins.
said that again
You mean
wrong.
437.
437.
You want the Gaslight Lounge, right?
License number 437, Gaslight Lounge.
Okay. Is there any objection to bifurcation? Madam Clerk, no objection to bifurcation, then we've bifurcated the issue. Now we need a motion, Mr. Constant, on the one you want to deal with first.
I would like to move to approve everything except for license 437.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection to that? See no objection, Madam Clerk. The body has approved all of them except for 437.
Yep. And I would like to move to postpone. Is that okay?
So what date?
Uh,
What's your date?
Ms. Navoski?
I'm sorry.
Dabowski.
I just want him, I really want him to postpone it till the end of the meeting because our last day to protest this to the board is January 19th. We're not going to have another meeting before
Another
then.
meeting till, yeah.
So he might be able to get his answers over the dinner break.
Perfect. So just postpone to the end of the evening.
End of meeting. Madam Clerk, please remind us before the end of the meeting so we can get to it. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, what we've decided to do is take up item 437 before the end of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Next one in front of us,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. I would appreciate, I've got to make a quick appearance somewhere else, if we could take up 9E1 out of order.
I don't think that's a particular problem. The indulgence of the body, let's take up item 9E1. Mr. Dyson's got another engagement he's got to take off too, so I understand what it is. Is there any objection from the body? Not seeing any, we change order of the day. We're going to take it up on item 9E1 first. Do I need a motion on that, Mr. Dyson?
Move to approve.
Move to accept it.
Yes.
Second. Second.
Moved and seconded to accept it. Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. This is the plan for the audit, and what is in this plan is the things the audit is required to do by statute and the departments who have requested audits. And I will provide you in a few days a list of all the other boards and commissions that are not annually or not audited either annually or at a sunset function. And I'd encourage you all to look at those and see if there's anything we ought to pay attention to. And I want to remind you, it's my belief that we have an excellent audit team, and that if you know of issues and organizations that should be audited, to please report that to me and the audit committee, and we'll take care of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Is any objection to acceptance of this item by the body? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk, that item is accepted by the body, item 91. Okay. Mr. Dyson, we'll see you back shortly.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dyson.
Tonight is a retirement party for Mary Beth Kepner, who is the FBI agent who led all of the VICO Alaska legislature investigations. At the time, it was the largest in terms of manpower that was going on in the nation, and under the federal honest service provisions. And so I'm going down to say goodbye, and I have a cap that I had made that says corrupt bastard catchers to give to her. And I believe that investigation and its results, which sadly had a great deal of substance, and 8 or 9 folks either pled out or were convicted, and fired a warning shot across the bow of all public officials. I think that there is integrity and there is ethics and there's a penalty for going across the board. And I want to say also that my friend, our mayor, picked up on some of this stuff that was going on far before I did, and in my view has been a model of ethical behavior. But anyways, I will, with your permission, tell Ms. Kepner that we appreciate what she did for our community.
If you
Thank
would, please, because I remember some of the videotapes going on at that time period, where you had public servants accepting cash on a table, selling their souls and their integrity for change. So I appreciate her efforts on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Next item in front of us should be item 9D16.
Move to approve.
Was pulled by Ms. Dembowski.
And move to approve.
Is there a second? Ms. Dembowski? Anything?
No, I made it very clear that I was not going to vote for any more appropriations to SAP, and I meant it.
Any other discussion from the body? If not, we'll put the vote up.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Constant.
Yeah, on this topic, I had an interesting conversation with a member of one of the departments at a bakery in town, and she said that we would be wise to consider appropriating all the way through June 30, because they're going to be asking for more money again. So just know that this doesn't do that, I don't think, and we're going to have this back again.
As I said many times, if you have a doctoral dissertation you need to do, SAP would be a good subject. Mr. France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I see that Mr. Harris is in the queue, so I'll go ahead and wait.
Okay. Mr. Harris, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to point out that this is not a new appropriation. This is existing money that's already been budgeted for 2018. All we're doing is moving the money from one category over to another to cover Peloton, which is providing 16 people to help us over this next quarter.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Other discussion from Assembly members before we vote on this issue? Mr. France, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, a question to Mr. Harris as we talked about this item earlier, and I was wondering if you would go ahead and share with the other members of the body some of what we discussed in terms of your approach to a support plan for SAP to move away from consultants, and how I believe this item is on the agenda for next week's budget meeting.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Funch. Yes. Right now, if we, originally when this project when we came into the administration, some of the talk had been about using a managed service approach, which basically would have one person in the IT department serving as a contract manager and outsourcing all of the services we have. We haven't followed that approach. Right now, we have essentially nine full-time equivalents within the municipality, the IT department, that are working on SAP. We also have this group of Peloton consultants plus some SAP consultants and some consultants from Sierra Tech to help us as we do this transition from the program launch into a stabilized or steady state sort of mode. We'll end up as we're working on this project, identifying problems. Certainly there are other communities within that we might think of as comparable. Portland, for example, the city of Tacoma. Both of those cities have implemented SAP in the last 10 years, and some of them, I think, probably have experiences very similar to ours. They've used less of a managed services approach, basically one person managing contracts, and have instead built out technical and functional staff within their groups. In the case of Portland, they also use professional services to help round out some of the gaps they have. But I think our numbers, in terms of the number of consultants we have and the number of staff we have dedicated to SAP at this moment, are about comparable with what those two cities saw when they first rolled out their SAP programs. And so that, to me, is a little bit of encouragement. Certainly, as we work to make sure that the essential functionality of the program does what we need it to do so that we can do our business, the folks we have now helping us are dedicated to that, and of course we continue to make sure that as we find problems, we're able to prioritize them and then work them and get them assigned resources to help them go forward. I don't know if I covered all the points you wanted me to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Croft, an issue in front of us.
Yeah, so Mr. Harris, this is not an increase in the overall budget of that we've allocated to SAP. This is within our understanding of the total budget of the project, or is it incremental?
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Croft, this is within the existing budget that has been approved for 2018 for the municipality. We're pulling money out of a pot of money that we thought we would use over the entire course of the year, and we're spending it faster now in this first quarter. And I think in this case especially, in the case of Peloton, this contractor, we, in thinking about the service level we needed from them, figured they'd be done by mid-October to mid-November. As it turns out, we found ourselves in a situation where we need their help for longer. So in this case, this is one of the things we're doing here is putting more money into a different bucket, changing buckets, but we're also extending increasing the contract authority we have to work with Peloton.
What's the total cost of SAP now at?
I don't have that number. I think the last number was around 81 million through the end.
It was 85.2.
Thank you, through the chair. So somewhere in the 80-ish, low $80 million number
Brief I had on was 85.
to date. Again, I don't have the exact figure. Some of the numbers, some of the money that we sort of was part of that 80-some million dollars, 82, $85 million. In fact, we saw a slowdown on some spending at the last part of the fourth quarter, so we'll be able to use some of that money as we move ahead.
Any other comments from Assembly members before we vote on this? Mr. Harris, I appreciate your comments, but the time, sir, to have contacted other cities was before the last administration issued this contract. Had they even called San Diego, they would have found out manifest problems with implementation of SAP in that town, comparable to us. They never did that. Because we called the chief fiscal officer down there and got all sorts of information. The last administration should have done that had they done their homework ahead of time. Anyway, please vote. That's approved. The vote is 9-1. That completes our consent agenda. We're now at dinner break time. Take our dinner break.
Do we have anybody?
What?
Do we have anybody speaking to the assembly?
No.
Okay.
No. We'll get the meeting started since you're in the room. Thank you. Moving down to the agenda, next item in front of us, item 11A, under business unfinished action on public hearing items. Same memorandum, AM 838, 2017, Board of Adjustment appointment. I need a motion on that. It was introduced. We had 2 weeks for it. I need a motion on it.
Move to approve. Second.
Move to second. Is there any objection to approval of this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, that item is approved. The individual is appointed. Is Tennis Delic here, by any chance?
Tomas.
Okay, Tomas. I don't see him here.
He's a good guy.
Okay. Next item in business.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I was in the queue there just briefly. Back when I got started in all this issues with Fairview and the homeless concentration, Mr. Dick was on the hand commission, and part of the process where Ms. Freeman and I began our relationship, and he's a hard worker and he knows his job very well.
Good. Thank you. Next item in front of us, item 14A, ordinance AO 2017-164, and S version, an ordinance submitting to qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of issuance general obligation bonds in the municipality of Anchorage not to exceed $50,656,500 to pay the cost of capital improvements for the Anchorage School District at the April 3rd, 2018 municipal election. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Chase J. McClure for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what town you live in. Don't tell me we have no one here from the school district to testify on their bonds?
No, they're there.
There they are. Come on.
Respond.
It's your time. Come down and testify. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. My name is Dina Bishop, B-I-S-H-O-P, and I am the superintendent of the Anchorage School District, and my zip code's 99501.
Okay.
And I'm pleased to be here this evening to request passage of this item to put the question before the voters to support $50 million and a little bit more for maintenance to move us along in the school district in regard to needed safety and infrastructure. With that, we look to come back to not only our board but to the city with a 2 to 5 year plan about how we utilize school district buildings and a greater plan for how we meet student needs as well as efficiencies and reducing our footprint. Thank you. I'm here with a team that can answer any detailed questions as needed.
Okay. I've got some questions from Assembly members. Mr. Constant first, sir. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of this bond because I understand we need to keep our schools healthy and functioning, but I would note for the record that there's not one student in District 1 that will see a benefit from any of this. So.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton, sir.
So this is roughly $50 million. How much are we paying off this year?
Through the chair, $56.5 million will be paid off this year.
Okay, so the total amount of debt of the school district will decrease essentially, even if this is voted.
That's
for.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from Assembly members? Mr. Croft.
Two things, comment and conflict disclosure. Yeah, so we're paying 56 off, we're only adding 50, but the 50 of debt has the full price tag, and the 56 we were retiring had bond debt reimbursement. So it's a good thing to do and an appropriate measure. It doesn't mean it's a zero or negative amount. It's not, we're not going to save because of the state's action. I wanted to put that my wife does architecture work. She has a contract with the school district. If these, now none of these bonds, I checked with her, she didn't have any of these projects because they haven't been let out as a project. But I honestly don't know whether that's a conflict. She would.
So that's not a conflict. It's really true. You don't have a conflict on this. It's de minimis. Okay? And just for me, I'd like you to make sure the public understands they're assuming the whole debt if this goes forward. In years past, we've had 50, 60, and higher percent state participation. There is no more state participation. So as you're going to school board, to community councils, please get the message out to the public. I want the citizens to understand, when we vote to take this, we're assuming the entire debt is the city. I wish it wasn't that way, but it's just how the state is now.
You have my word.
Thank you. And I appreciate you living in town now. I remember when you got the job, I asked you going to move into Anchorage? You told me yes. So it's nice to know you're living here with a zip code. We appreciate it, man.
I love it, by the way. It's very fun.
You do a great job for the
Thank
town. Any other questions from Assembly members? Saying none, thank you. We have other people to testify. Anybody else wish to testify on this item? Anyone at all? It's a little over $50 million.
Going once.
Okay. Public hearing on this item is closed. What's the wish of the body? I want a motion on the S version.
Move to approve the S version.
Second.
Okay. Discussion from Assembly members. Okay.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. Well, okay.
You want to?
Yes, I want to say
Okay,
a word, but
we'll wait off.
we have to figure this out anyway. So I just wanted to say that for those watching at home, I know Mr. Welton comments on this sometimes, that we pass very large items and budget items, and it seems like we haven't done any discussion. We had a joint meeting with the school board and discussed this a couple of weeks ago. So we have talked about this. I know my colleagues have read through this packet as well. So just to sort of assure the people, members of the public, this is not something that we are just rubber stamping. There has been discussion and reading of this bond package. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Please vote.
The system is messed up.
Shall I withdraw my vote?
Reset that. I'll push it again. Okay, I'm going to push reset. Please vote. Just a minor blip. Did everybody vote?
I don't know what happened to it.
Can you give me what the voting is? For the public, the vote was 10-0. What this does, it just sends the voters on the election of April the 3rd. This does not pass the tax, it just sends on the voters. Now each voter will determine themselves on April the 3rd whether they approve it or don't. The computer's not working. The clerk tells me the vote was 10-0. You want to take a break, or you got it? Okay. Next item in front of us is ordinance AO 2017-169, ordinance providing for the submission of the qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of the issuance of not to exceed $2,588,000 of general obligation bonds of the municipality of Anchorage to pay the cost of fire protection capital improvements and related capital improvements in the Anchorage Fire Service Area, and election to be held in the municipality on April the 3rd, 2018, and revising the 2018 capital improvement budget, CIB, Fund Department, Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Chief Chairman, clear for the record and spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no one, public testimony is closed. Will switch to the body. I need a second. Second by Mr. Whittleton, moved by Mr. Peterson. Comments from Assembly members? Okay. Please vote. That was approved, 9-0.
Who's missing? Chris?
That's another one that will appear on the ballot on April the 3rd. Next item in front of us, item 14C, ordinance AO 2017-170, an ordinance providing for the submission of qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of the issuance not to exceed $4,908,000 general obligation bonds of the municipality to pay the costs of area-wide public safety and transit improvements and related capital improvements at the election to be held in the municipality on April 3rd, 2018. Finance Department and Office of Public Management, Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. If you wish to testify, please come forward. State your name and career for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing saying no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Was moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Any comments from assembly members? Not seeing any. Please vote. The vote was 10-0. Again, that will appear on the April 3rd ballot. Next item in front is item 14D, ordinance AO 2017-171, ordinance providing for the submission of qualified voters of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of the issues not to exceed $1,407,000 of general obligation bonds of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, to pay the cost of area-wide facilities capital improvement projects at the election to be held in the municipality on April 3rd, 2018. Finance Department and Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name, for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Dunbar, seconded by Mr. It was Mr. France I saw, but
Go ahead.
I didn't know your voice had changed that much, man. Anyway, comments from assembly members. Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Harris, can you remind me how much we're retiring in bond debt this year? And what is the total number of bonds we're putting on the ballot? I'm adding them up as we go, but.
Through the chair, Ms. Dombowski, the amount that we are retiring is a little more than $38 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then your second question?
The second question is, have you totaled up these? I'm just totaling them now. I can do it myself, but.
Yes, with the assembly amendments that were added into the capital program, it's 47.68.
So we're retiring 38 million and we're asking to bond 47 million what did you say?
47.68 million.
47.68. Okay, thank you.
Is all, Ms. Dombowski? Yes, sir. Okay. Other comments from assembly members before you vote? Please vote. Mr. Croft, you need to vote, sir. Thank you. That's approved, 9-1. Next item in front of us is item 14E, ordinance AO 2017-172, an ordinance providing for the submission of qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska, the question of the issuance not to exceed $33,865,000 general obligation bonds of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, to pay the cost of road and storm drainage capital improvements in the Anchorage roads and drain service area, related capital improvements, and the issuance, and the question of an increase in the municipal tax cap information limitation to pay associated operations and maintenance costs of the Anchorage roads and drainage service area, an election to be held in the municipality on April 3rd, 2017. Finance Department and Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Welcome to the meeting, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the Assembly. My name is Steve Gervel, G-E-R-V-E-L. I am the designated representative from the Sand Lake Community Council to speak on this issue. And also with me is Alan Thornhill from West Park Homeowners Association.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we, as a council, would like the full support of the Assembly on this bond issue, and specifically for an issue that we've been dealing with in the Sand Lake area over the last 20 to 30 years, is the issue of water quality. So one of the issues on the bond was for improvements for a West Park stormwater bypass system. So we urge your support in the total bond package to include this project. And I will entertain any questions from the chair of the Assembly about the history or anything about the issue.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate getting your email earlier today. Thanks for sending the email out to us, too. Mr. Constant? Questions?
Yeah, this is more of a point of order on the issue of West Park. As folks might remember, I was excluded from that deliberation because of a conflict of interest. And so I don't think that I would have a conflict on voting for the main motion that's before us, but I just want to put that out there on the record that that was part of the discussion before.
That was only a small portion of this overall package, so you don't have a conflict on this. Any questions, Mr. Constant, for him? Mr. Dunbar.
Yeah, I was curious about, and I've heard different numbers, but approximately how many households will this bypass benefit? For how many households will this improve their water quality?
Well, the issue is not only for the water quality, it's also for flooding in the West Park area.
Okay.
So there's two facets to that question. As far as people down gradient from where this current system is going into the pond, our hydrologist that we had contracted as the Sand Lake Council through a state grant from Senator Costello just completed a water study, and from the numbers that he found, there would be 30 to 50 people down gradient that would have potential impact from the deterioration in water quality.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not only a flood control issue, it's a water quality issue for wells in the area. We didn't size it properly, I think, in the beginning, and so there's an obvious need to upgrade that diversion, and it's a worthy project that they've been concerned about for years now. So I hope folks will vote for it.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Any other questions or comments from Assembly members? Thank you. There's no questions. Thank you. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Welcome, sir.
Well, I have sent you, excuse me, Mr. Train.
Go ahead, sir.
As the president of the association in West Park.
We need your name.
Alan Thornhill. I live at West Park. And, you know, we have been over and over and over this stuff. And, you know, I mean, the only thing we want is the money left over so that we can get this thing done once and for all. Because we have been kind of shortchanged. And we're talking about a lot of people, a lot of houses, a lot of money.
A lot of lives.
And a lot of lives. And, you know, as far as, you know, I don't want to go on record as far as everybody in there, but as far as the association voting, and for me representing them, you know, we're kind of just tired of being able to be shortchanged. Excuse me. But anytime, all the way up from Merlewood being thrown in there, we also, you know, the city knew that this was a undersized line, and then White Raven across on West Park is still putting in their street, and they're also still putting in duplexes as we speak. So we have been kind of shortchanged all the way around.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steele, a question?
No, there are two school sites in that development as well that have not been built out yet. So when they build out, there will be more solid surface to increase the runoff. So it's something that's necessary to happen.
So there are no other questions for you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move
Need a
to
motion
approve.
on it?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Discussion from Assembly members. Say no. Assembly members queuing in, please vote. That was approved. The vote was 10-0. That'll be in front of the voters on April the 3rd. Now your work begins. We got this in front of the body. Now you need to get the people to vote on it. Thank you for being here. Next item in front of us is item 14F, AO 2017-173, an ordinance providing for the submission of the qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska. The question of the issue is not to exceed $1,050,000 of general obligation bonds of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, to pay the cost of public safety facilities, police, and related capital improvements in the Anchorage Metropolitan Police Service area at an election to be held in the municipality on April the 3rd, 2018. Finance Department, Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clear for the record. Spare your last name if you would, please. Anyone at all? Hearing saying no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I'll need a second. Second. It was moved by Mr. Constance, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Comments from Assembly members? Please vote. That was approved 9-1. That will appear on the April ballot also. Next item in front of us, item 14G, ordinance AO 2017-177, ordinance providing for the submission of the qualified voters of Anchorage, Alaska. The question of the issuance not to exceed $3,650,000 of general obligation bonds of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, to pay the costs of construction, renovating, and equipping park, trail, and recreational facilities, capital improvements, and related capital improvements in the Anchorage Parks and Recreation Service area, and the question of the increase in the municipal tax cap limitation to pay the associated operation and maintenance costs in the Anchorage Parks and Recreation Service area without cost to Chugach, Eagle River, Girdwood, and other taxpayers outside the service area, an election to be held in the municipality on April 3rd, 2018. Finance Department and Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. J.J. McCurry for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Dunbar, seconded by Mr. Constant. Questions, comments from Assembly members? Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we won't have another opportunity, I think, to speak about some of our park upgrades in such a direct way. This year, we don't have the new Chanchnu Muldoon Park on the bond, but last year we were able to put some bond money towards that park. And I urge my colleagues or anyone watching on TV or anywhere, drive down Muldoon past Chanchnu, basically anytime between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m., and you will see people ice skating on the new ribbon that we built there. It's remarkable. I haven't seen, it's just incredibly successful. The upgrade has brought people into the area. It feels happier, lighter. There are children there basically all the time. And it's because we pass items like this. These upgrades to our parks, and so far the people of Anchorage have been incredibly welcoming and supportive of our parks and trails, and they are a priceless asset for this community. And again, I urge everyone to drive by the new Changchun Muldoon Park. I can't say enough about the idea that came out of our Parks Department and came out of the community to put an ice skating ribbon there, because it has just transformed that space. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's great, sir. Mr. Williford, sir, on this issue.
Well, 2 points, and one to follow up on Mr. Dunbar's is, this is a lot of money, but when you add up the amount of volunteer work that goes in to maintain and create our parks, through the Parks Foundation, and we heard earlier with the Nordic Ski Club, they maintain almost all of our soft surface dirt trails and groom them in the winter. It's volunteer labor, volunteer contributions, soccer club. I mean, across the city, we really leverage a huge amount of money and resources in our parks. And then one other thing for people who might be listening, this does say we'll vote on these on April 3rd, but we all know that we will be vote by mail this year, so it will be much sooner. Mid-March, you'll get them in the mail. So it's a very different dynamic now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from assembly members? No comments? Please vote. Item was approved. The vote was 9-1. That will be on the ballot this year. Next item in front of us is item 14, item 14H, ordinance AO 2017-167, ordinance of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, amending the sunset provision of Anchorage Municipal Code Section 4.60.270 to reauthorize the Public Safety Advisory Commission from Assembly Member Dabowski and Assembly Chair Trainee and Assembly Member Croft. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. The vote to the body. Ms. Dabowski.
Move to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
It was moved in a second. Ms. Dabowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've talked about this multiple times at the Public Safety Committee, and we've had some discussions here. I've had the opportunity to attend multiple Public Safety Advisory Commissions now, and the Commission has a letter attached, so you can see, I think they gave it to us at our last meeting, all the different things they were doing. In part, I know how much work it does take for citizens to get involved in boards and commissions, and I really felt like there was a failure of communication, not just between the commission and the mayor's office, but between the assembly and the commission. We didn't really give them the tools to be successful. They hadn't had an assembly member go to their commission meeting. They didn't understand basically the ropes. And so with the leadership of the chair, he assigned me to go to their committee meetings and just kind of help them facilitate communication flow. They have been active. Their committee members or commissioners are assigned fire stations, and so they do go on their own and they go to the fire stations, they talk to the firemen, they talk to policemen, and they figure out what are the issues that are important. And one of the topics, one of the projects they're working on right now will be something I think the representatives that represent the Diamond area will be interested in South Anchorage, is the potential for maybe another safety patrol center, but maybe potentially expanding the contract for the Anchorage Safety Patrol. In particular, they've had a lot of conversations with the guys over at Station 12, which is over off of Diamond. There's been an increased number of calls for inebriates and man downs and that kind of thing. And what we have noticed, especially in the downtown area, when Ms. Gray Jackson, Mr. Trainee, and myself, I think you were on that one, when we expanded the contract for the ASP van service, what we really noticed, it was especially beneficial to Station 1, because now we didn't have really expensive fire service going and sitting for an hour waiting for transport. So now, those are the types of things that the Assembly had done, and they're actually working on the same type of concept. They're trying to drill down on the numbers. They're doing an evaluation and saying, is it just the contract, or do we need actually another safety patrol center? So that was a project they were working on before I actually started going to their meetings. But I learned about it when I went there, and I'm facilitating some information from when we did that back in 2013, 2014. So I think it's going to be a productive relationship. And like I said, every time I've been there, they're talking, they're actively in the community working. I think with this ability for the assembly to directly engage with them, I think you'll see a lot more coming from the commission directly instead of just going through the mayor's office, and I think it'll be beneficial. So my recommendation would be to re-up the commission. Obviously, it'll come back for us again in the future, and if we have issues, we can always go back and readdress it. But I think it's only fair that we give them a chance to do the job they've been doing, and now we get to be cheerleaders and benefit from all their work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, I actually agree with a lot that was said. There's a companion or alternative, if you will, coming up that I'll intend to postpone. When I originally read the audit report, that there hadn't been any, the audit finding was that from January 2016 through May 2017, the commission did not issue any resolutions or any reports. And as the commissioners, or as the committee members said, as the chair said, the fabulously named Nick Danger, we have current vacancies. They find it hard to keep members, and yet they're making an argument for keeping it at 9. I continue to believe it would probably be a more functional body at 7. It's hard to get, volunteers to do this, and so having both vacancies and an argument that it stay at 9. So that's why I at least put the straw man proposal of bringing the numbers down, given some more guidelines as to who would be there, representatives from various of the law enforcement communities. But what was previously said by Ms. Demboski is also very true, and that's the reason I'm supporting and will vote yes today. I mean, those that have been there, even though it hasn't been good communication and there hadn't been a lot of production out of it, did spend their time, did try and do things, and so in the balance of a slightly maybe more lean and mean efficient one, but at not fully honoring what they've tried to do and what maybe all of us have not done as well as we could have. I guess I would rather err on the side of honoring their attempts. And ours as well, and the promise to do better. So I think, I still think there are some issues with having this large a commission and one with sitting vacancies, but I'm willing to give it a try, and we can look at it when it comes back up for renewal in 2020. So I'll be supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Other comments from assembly members? Not seeing any. I've got a comment to make. I appreciate you going to the meetings, Ms. Demboski. Part of the problem was there's lack of communication between the commission and the assembly. They didn't really understand their role was not just to report to the mayor, but also to report to the assembly. I think this has been a good process. We cleaned up the miscommunication. It wasn't just them, it was us too. So I appreciate the efforts been put into this. I'll be approving this. So please vote on this item. Item is approved 10-0.
Mr. Chair.
Sir?
Yeah, Mr. Dyson is back and his machine didn't register a vote.
Mr. Dyson, how do you want to be reflected on that one? Madam Clerk? I saw his thumb went up. You were reflected as a positive vote, Mr. Dyson. How'd your meeting go? You told her we appreciated all of her support? Clean up that problem there was in Juneau?
Yes, I told her the Anchorage Assembly and its mayor appreciated the service that she had provided for our city, not only in locking up some bad guys, but sending a signal that ethical service on the part of elected officials is expected and required, and that our culture has changed for at least a decade or two, and we're in her debt.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Next item in front is item 14. Let's see. 14I. Ordinance 2017-168, ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly terminating the Public Safety Commission.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Can't do that. It's an item I have to open a public hearing for, sir.
Okay.
Move to kill.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
Ordinance AO 2017-116, ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly terminating the Public Safety Advisory Commission, PSAC, and establishing the PSAC, providing for appointment and confirmation of 7 new commissioners, and repealing and reenacting Anchorage Code 4.60.270, according to, from Assembly Member Croft. Okay, public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody who wishes to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name. Keeping understand, this will probably be killed immediately. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. The votes wish the body.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Moved and seconded to postpone indefinitely. Please vote.
System's jammed.
What?
The system's pre-filled.
You already did?
No, okay.
Okay. Do you want to reset it? I got faster than the machine that time. You ready now? You have motion to postpone indefinitely.
Let me do it.
Ready? Okay. Please vote. Motion is postponed indefinitely. Let the electrons catch up to us.
Damn slow electronics. Oops, pardon me.
I voted. Can you get what? Do you mean to tell it to reset again? I can hit reset. Okay. Okay. Third time, please.
I'm going to go first.
You're populating the field? Oh. Okay, I want to see it up there. There. That is gone.
Hard to kill.
Sorry for the delay. Next item in front is item 14J, ordinance AO 2017-174, an ordinance authorizing long-term lease between the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska's lessor and 20 T-hanger owners as lessees of Lot 1C, Block 5, Merrill-Field Repad, Addition Number 5, located south of Runway 6-24 and east of Runway 16-34. Merrill Field Airport. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I need a second. Okay, thank you.
He said it. He was faster than me.
Mr. Constant, you're in the queue.
Yep, thank you. It's kind of tangentially related to the matter before us, Mr. Bowers. I just wanted to relate to you that since you're here, this weekend there was a gathering of individuals who live nearby the Sitka Park up above Orca Street, where the acquisition is ongoing at this time, and they're contemplating their vision for what they would like to see Merrill-Field do with that property. So I just wanted to let you know that that conversation is happening.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Any other comments from Assembly members? Seeing none, please vote. Item is approved. The vote was 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14K, Resolution AR 2017-393, resolution appropriating when tendered $155,794 from the United States Department of the Interior Survey, ISGS, and a grant to Merrill-Field Operating Fund 580000 for the continued use of 1568 East 12th at the USGS Hydraulic Resource Center. Merrill Airport. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name and career for the record. Spell your last name and total proud town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Constant, second by Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that in the header, I assume is what you call it, for this AR, that the number written does not match the number in the parentheses. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but they would probably match each other.
600.
Madam Clerk. We're at Mr. Rivera.
Line 2.
It's in the title.
Yeah, it's in the title. There you go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
This item's getting.
Good catch, Felix.
You see what he means? Can you take, can the clerk's office take care of that? Herc advised me they can take care of that problem. Thank you for catching that.
Mr. Chair, I would
Yes,
ask
sir.
legal advice on that.
You what? Dean?
Yeah, I'm happy to, through the
Go
chair,
ahead,
if you'd
ma'am.
rather,
Thanks, Becky.
I don't believe that you need to make the change. It certainly doesn't affect the outcome of the action. It's simply Scrivener's error in the title of the document. To the extent you want to, you certainly may, but I don't believe you need to take that action in order to have the correct outcome occur tonight.
Since you're our attorney that represents us in court, we'll take your point of view, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please vote on this item. Item is approved 11-0. Next item in front of us, item 14L. Resolution AR 2017-396, a resolution authorizing disposal of disposal of a municipal street light electrical easement without substantial value with a portion of Lot 16, Block 2, Grant Subdivision, Addition Number 1, Plat 97-160, PID 14-192-17. Maintenance and Operations Department. Public hearing this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name, crew for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. Wish of the body.
Move to
Item
approve.
14L.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Ms. LaFrance. Comments from Assembly members? Okay. Please vote. That's approved 11-0. Next one in front of us is item 14M, Resolution AR 2017-400, a resolution appropriating $204,817 of unclaimed excess proceeds revenue to the Real Estate Service RES Area-wide General Fund, Area-wide General Operating Fund.
Waive reading.
Thank you. As a contribution, municipal land improvements. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, crew for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Seeing here, no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Moved by Mr. Wilton, seconded by Mr. Constant. Discussion from Assembly members. Okay. Please vote. That's approved 11-0. Next item in front is item 14N. 14N is Resolution AR 2017-394, resolution appropriating a contribution of $300,000 approved in the 2017 Parks and Recreation Department operating budget from the Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Service Area Fund 161000 to the Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Fund Service Area Capital Improvement Project Contribution Fund 141800, all within the Parks and Recreation Department for the purpose of purchasing capital equipment and improving parks, trails, and facilities. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name, occur for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and saying none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Dunbar, second by Mr. Constant. Comments from assembly members on this item? Okay. Please vote. That was approved. The vote was 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14O, Resolution AR 2017-395, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, appropriating $340,000 contribution from the 2017 Maintenance and Operations Department Operating Budget Area-Wide General Fund 101000 to the Area-Wide General Capital Improvement Program Fund, CIP Fund 401800.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This is for establishing a capital reserve for future roof repairs to the George M. Sullivan Arena. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing seeing none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to Mr. Constant, second by Mr. Peterson. Discussion from assembly members. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so I'm just wondering, is this the first of an annual payment of $340,000 that we're going to be making to upgrade these roofs at some point in the future?
Mr. Falsey?
Through the chair, I'll invite either Lance Wilbur or Alan Chakowski to check my math, but I believe this clears the obligation in its entirety, so it's the first and last. But let's see if Alan tells me I'm right.
We like first and last.
Through the body. This is Alan Chakowski. This is an annual installment started in 2008, I believe, and what it is it's a fund that we move money so that when it's time to replace these three roofs, the Sullivan, the museum, and I'm forgetting the third one. But anyway, LUSAC, it allows us to pay cash for the replacement of the roofs.
Right, that way we don't have to bond for them.
Correct.
So is this the first, are we going to be making payments like this every year to build up this fund?
Correct. We have been for the last 10. Pardon?
Is this the last?
No, it is not.
All right.
It's ongoing till it's the time to replace the roofs, till a fund reaches a certain dollar value.
Right. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Among many of us, Mr. Pierce, the way we wish the school district would operate, to build the funds up on a constant basis, because eventually the roofs are going to need replaced. That way you don't have to go out and bond for something like that. So I appreciate the administration taking this initiative to do that. Any discussion from assembly members? If not, please vote. That is approved. The vote was 11-0. Next item in front of us is item 14P, Ordinance AO 2017-175, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly, amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Section 21.03.020, 21.03.105, 21.05.010, 21.05.055, and 21.002, and 21.50.420 to update and clarify land use regulations for commercial marijuana establishments. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. J.H. McCurry for the record, and spell your last name if you would, please.
Out of the chair.
Sir?
Point of order.
Go
So
ahead.
can I mention a little bit about a course we may take on this to help the speakers?
Yep.
Appreciate everyone coming. We have a S version, a substitute version that's in play that I hope you got a hold of, and that's kind of the main document we're working from. And we've had a flurry of amendments primarily on one issue, and that is what kind of extraction can be done in B3 zoning districts. So we've got 5 different versions of amendments on that. All of them have fairly small permutations on processes that we're not experts on. So what I will be asking for and expect will happen is that we will take your testimony today, continue the public hearing, but send this again to the Community and Economic Development Committee where we can work kind of systematically go through those various amendments. So I hope you'll talk to us about, particularly we need information on these processing systems and what you guys would want there. But also you'll have a chance to speak to it at the committee meeting. Thanks.
And if it's an S version does come forward, you'll be able to testify on the S version too.
Right.
So it would help us if you testify tonight because we want to get the process down correctly as to what version we're going to have. So please come forward and testify. Thank you, John.
I am Dane Wyrick, last name W-Y-R-I-C-K.
Could you pull the microphone closer so we can hear you?
I'm Dane Wyrick.
Thank you.
Last name W-Y-R-I-C-K. Live in South Anchorage. I'm the owner of Danish Gardens. My purpose for coming up here as I spoke, I believe this was the ordinance based on an issue we have with information being broadcast out on the internets. My attorney told me that this was the one I needed to testify on, but while we're here on that, just to give you an input, we're in applications right now for our extraction licenses, and we're looking at ethanol alcohol systems, so closed-loop ethanol alcohol systems. But what I came up here in the first place for was, my understanding is there's a issue out there right now where information for all of my floor plans, all of my security, my cameras, my locks on my doors are all being broadcast out on public website information. It came most boldly to our attention on the 19th of December when my facility was burglarized, and people came in and busted out our stuff, and all of my floor plans were on the internet. They knew where to go, exactly how to get there. They went in the right door. They were in and out of our building. And inside of 61 seconds, we lost $150,000 worth of product. And it brought up a few other really curious issues that we really would like to address, is that starting from there, it took about 20 minutes for the police to respond to our building in a live burglary. Since they responded, it took them 5 days to come and pick up our security footage. They told us they would be picking up footage from all of our neighbors. They did none of that. We did every bit of it for them. So we're really kind of wondering, as a multiple-pronged thing here, is that we're a legitimate business. We were voted to be in business. We spend a lot of money, and we take it very seriously. And we feel like we're paying an exorbitant amount of taxes. And what are we getting? We're not getting police security. We're not getting cyber security. And on top of that, since we were robbed, within a few days of that, I received a NOV for smell of marijuana coming out of my building, even though I had busted windows. I received the NOV. Technically, I never received it. My attorney, who is not my attorney of record, received the violation in her office on the 24th of December. She was on vacation from that. Somebody in her office signed for it, and it was an issue that they're dealing with. But I never received this violation at all. And now all of a sudden I have a default judgment against me because I never knew about it. And I'm really kind of curious of, why am I playing by all the rules? I'm doing everything correctly. I get audited on a regular basis. In my neighborhood, within a stone's throw of my building, there is 2 commercial illegal grows. The city knows about it. The state knows about it. Do we know if the smell is coming from them? If there is a smell coming, I'm wondering why I'm playing by the rules. I'm trying to make this industry work. And at the same time, I feel like I'm getting severely beat up by the building department, who, if I don't have a license and I don't play by the rules, there's no teeth in it. No one's being prosecuted. No one is being investigated, and no one's being shut down. Only those who are willing to play this game and play it the right way and try to build this industry the right way, we're being harassed and we're not being protected. And we want to know why we're paying all this taxation to be punished for doing something that our city voted to have done.
I've got your time's up. Let me go to Mr. Wilton. Any questions to Mr. Wilton?
No, I guess not exactly a question. I mean, I feel really bad about your burglary. It was terrible. And we had been working on some security, trying to get that information offline. And we have in the S version here, the substitute version for this ordinance that we're doing the public hearing on now, does address overtly where you don't have to put the security cameras, but we also have an amendment that would say you don't have to identify rooms on your floor plan. So that would help. And that would be on the city application. We're also looking into the possibility of redacting things in the state. So we are actively working on that aspect of the problem because it's very clear, and others have mentioned it too, and your burglary highlights how critical that information is.
Well,
I appreciate the
if
information.
I may, it's the policy, the way it stands right now, is irresponsible and dangerous, to say the very least. Since then, we've had to lay off a lot of employees to recover from this. We've had to bring in more administrative people to do audits from AMCO, from the city, from our insurance companies. And at the same time, we're paying exorbitant amount of taxes and we're getting nothing for it. And we watch, unfortunately, people like AC/DC who get no criminal charges, or the people out in Homer who get busted with a lot of pot and there's no charges to them at all. So we're wondering why we're working so hard to make this work right and working with the assembly and the state when the state and the assembly doesn't seem to be working with the industry.
Any other questions, Mr. Wilton?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Croft, is that something you can do? Public safety has asked the police department why it took so long. If they received notification of a break-in, the time frame between notification and when the police actually showed up there. At your next committee meeting, we'd appreciate that.
Just if I may, I received the burglary notice when I was in bed. I live in West Anchorage. I managed to get up out of bed, get my clothes on, drive all the way across town to my shop at 2 o'clock in the morning, and was there for almost 8 minutes before the first police officer showed up. And that's not right. It's not right. And I feel like I know that 2 of my neighbors have had burglary alarms go off in the last year, and both of those people had police response within 60 seconds.
Okay. There are no other questions. Thank you. Mr. Costa.
It's not a question. I just want to make a brief comment that while I understand and recognize and feel your pain, that I hope you're made whole through this. I do object to the notion that this body has not been working hard to ensure that this industry is successful. I just would like the public to recognize that there's a lot of hard work, and in fact, almost every week these conversations are ongoing. And so I just want to make sure that the public and the record reflects that this body is not working against your industry.
I understand that, and I really probably shouldn't have said that. I do feel very frustrated what's going on. It just seems like to me there's a lot of talk and not enough action, but like you just said, this body here has made it possible for us to be doing what we're doing, and we just hope that maybe you guys can step up a little bit of effort against the state and some of the other ordinances that are making this dangerous and irresponsible for us, you know.
Well, make sure you deal with AMCO so they change the process, because that information should not be put across the public airways. Because once your diagram for your building gets out there, your security diagram, you're subject to anybody that says, I can figure out how to break in there. I'll just get that diagram and I'll avoid that area.
And we really appreciate that you guys are changing this ordinance up and getting this stuff off there, and that's really good for the people who go and file their stuff out there now. But since our burglary, we've had almost 47 million views worldwide on the internet from the news departments, which means at least 47 million people have my security plans, and there's nothing I can do to change it.
Might as well put your safe combination out there too, so that'll make it easier on, they wouldn't have to try and break in the safe. They can just dial the information.
Well, we thought about just maybe leaving it open with the doors open.
Yeah, good. Thanks
Thank
for
you
being
for your
here,
time.
sir. We appreciate it. Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. An attorney of record, huh?
Janet Weldstein, attorney for a lot of the businesses, including the one that just spoke. And just to clarify, it was the 21st of December that we were served notice. And we're not, when he says it, not attorney of record, it means not a registered agent. So registered agents are authorized to accept service. If you're not the registered agent, then you need to get permission for each service to be able to accept it.
Now, was that from AMCO or?
That's just like the law.
Who was the notice of violation from?
Oh, the Muni. Yeah, it was from the municipality.
Okay.
Anyways, we're working through that issue. I just wanted to come up here and state on the B3 amendment, we're organizing and getting expert information for you and expert witnesses to come, not witnesses, but people to come in that really know this subject matter a lot better than me and a lot better than probably most of us, to come in at the next econ development meeting when this is calendared for us to discuss. So we don't have too much to present on that B3 issue now, but I'll answer questions the best I can. But if not, we'd like to save all of our testimony for the actual economic development meeting when we can really dive into the details.
Okay. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have you here and we're talking about this specifically, I'm just curious about this notice of violation. It was for odor. Is that right?
Yeah, it was for odor. So the first notice of violation that we received from the Muni was an odor complaint for Danish Gardens, and I responded to the administrative hearing office and requested a hearing, and then I also stated that there was no facts that I could respond to. It just said, hey, you have odor, and this is your fine, $300 a day or whatever the number was, and I had no facts to respond to. And so it's kind of difficult to respond to something when you have no facts. And so the hearing officer agreed with me and dismissed the complaint without prejudice, which means they could refile it. And they did, but they also added a bunch of other dates in December. And then I left for holiday travels on the 21st. So my office had the certificate, had the certified piece of mail, and Christmas came and New Year's Eve came, or New Year's Day, which are legal holidays, but they counted those into the 15-day response time. So they told us by the time we got back that we had missed the last day that I could file a request for hearing with the administrative law judge, which means an $800 a day of, I think they're asking for $800 a day for 8 days, which I think is $3,200 fine, which would be entered in default. So I wrote to the administrative judge, and there's a citation in your code that says, you can accept late notice if there's good cause. Well, there's 4 or 5 reasons that there's good cause. One, they just suffered a burglary right around this time period, so they're dealing with police reports and laying off half their employees. 2, you didn't even send it to the actual facility, even though on your notice of service that I got from the administrative hearing officer, which I should have gotten with my documents too, notice of service, certificate of service, saying, hey, I served it to this address and here's my notarized declaration. I didn't even get that. It was supposed to be in my packet, but they sent it to the administrative hearing officer and they stated the address of the facility, so they served it there, but they didn't. They served it on me. I'm not the registered agent, so I can't technically accept service without authorization of my client.
And has there been a resolution to that? Sorry.
Oh, no. They have until Thursday, end of day Thursday, the Muni does, to respond to my arguments about my request to give us a hearing. I'm not, that's all I'm asking for. It's just a chance, a day in court. I mean, you had Christmas Day and then you had New Year's Eve Day, legal holidays.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, one last follow-up question, because I'm learning a lot about this particular process. I think it's very important that we understand how our employees are working with this industry. If for some reason that judge decides that, no, they rule against you, is there an appeal above that? Can you go to Superior Court, or where does it go?
I could be wrong on this, but I believe I appeal it first to this body.
I think you appeal it to the Assembly after hearing officer.
Right, and then if for some reason that doesn't, resolve the issue, we can appeal it to the Superior Court.
Okay.
I believe, that's just off memory, and I'm sure your legal counsel could probably correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any other comments from Assembly members? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this item, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, Public testimony on this item is closed. Mr. Whittleton, sir?
He has to, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'd move to continue the public hearing till, I suppose, the 23rd.
23rd.
I think we'll be able to have a community economic, we have one scheduled, I believe has time for this issue between now and then. So
Do you have time? Do you want to continue to a later meeting or what, sir? Is there something, this has to be done right now coming in front of us?
Not that I'm aware of, but we do have these amendments fairly well lined out. I have a little cheat sheet, and I think with their experts, we should be able to get it done in a regular meeting. So I'll move to do it on the 23rd.
Second.
Is there any objection to continuing this item to the 23rd?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you probably know the schedule better than I do. I anticipate the 23rd is going to be a very busy meeting
It's
night.
going to be a very big night. This will probably be at the end. If we don't get to it, we don't get to it.
Yeah.
It's not an item that has to be on the ballot.
Okay, I was going to say, if you would stack it so it's at the very end of the agenda, or that's why I was thinking maybe the first meeting in
I'm going to
February.
use some creative license on the agenda, believe me, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Any objection to this? So this will come back in front of us on the 23rd.
May I, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman?
ma'am.
Sorry, the AMCO Juneau meeting is the date.
We can't get you on the microphone.
The AMCO Marijuana Control Board meeting, where we all will be at in Juneau, is on the date that you are referring to, January.
23rd?
Can I withdraw that then, or would I have to call for reconsideration? We didn't vote, so I can change it to the 13th of February. Would that work? Is there any problem from staff?
She's checking the schedule.
You know, I actually won't be here on the 13th.
What day would you like us to move it to? I'll be here.
So,
That's in, February?
so
Yeah,
John,
that would be,
so we're talking about amendments that, I mean, one of them allows them to not have their security plans on the internet. Don't we want to do that pretty soon?
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. Well, it's not. The S version addresses that in one regard with the cameras. There's a amendment I would put forward that will say they don't have to label their rooms. They don't have to show quite as much detail on the floor plan. Right now, we get more than we really need. So those are in there. The complication at this point is the extraction in B3 zoning districts, like kind of commercial. And we've got like 5 versions of that that we're looking at. So that's the main thing that's holding us up.
could we maybe discuss that issue on January 18th at the next?
Well, we will discuss it at the Community Economic Development Committee that has time for it.
Okay.
Which I'd rather have it done sooner than later. And I'm not sure at the next one, I think we have one marijuana application at our next meeting, which would give us time for this. But we have a joint meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission roughed in as well. So I don't know the exact date for the Community Economic
John,
Development.
rescind your previous motion.
So, okay, have I done that? I rescind my previous motion and move that we continue the public hearing to February 13th.
February 13th?
Which by then, we would have kind of talked about it anyways, so that's probably fine.
Right, it'd be.
Yeah.
Okay, it's now, you're moving to February 13th, sir?
Yes.
2018.
2018.
Does the second agree to that? Does the second, Chris, go ahead and agree to it.
Second.
Okay.
I do want to bring something up, though, that we moved this is from Mr. Peterson's thinking, I think it's great thinking, that we move the legislative program to the next meeting, and I would propose that we consider adding or making an S version of this that speaks to the safety of the industry in our legislative package, ask the legislature to address this concern if AMCO can't. And so, because it is serious enough that we need to put some attention
We have
to.
enough time between now and when we deal with the legislative package to make that happen, sir.
Yeah.
Any objection to that? We will take this up again on the 13th of February, I believe, sir. Thank you. Next item in front of us, item 14Q, Resolution Air 2018-1, a resolution of the Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for marijuana manufacturing facility with license number 10856 Raspberry Roots LLC, doing business as Raspberry Roots, located at 501 Raspberry Road. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name and career for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moving to second. Mr. Wilton, this coming from your committee?
We did review this at committee, and we recommended approval.
Okay. Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to say this just one time. I'm not going to speak to each one of these. States and municipalities across the country move forward with marijuana industry with the basis of that being the guidelines within the Cole memo. Many of us have seen the decision by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The DOJ has since rescinded that memo. It's my belief that the federal government, through the Controlled Substance Act, regulates the controlled substances, marijuana being one. I think Congress really needs to take action. They either need to amend the Controlled Substances Act or they need to remove marijuana from the Schedule I list. I think many of us saw this coming, have been concerned about this potential move. What it means as of now, we don't know. But it is something that has been of concern. I do believe we're a nation of laws. And I went back and reread our oath of office, which says that we will not only support the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, and the municipal charter of the city of Anchorage. As lawmakers, we have a responsibility to navigate all three. With that said, in light of the current decision by the DOJ, until Congress takes action, until they frankly do their job, I will no longer be voting for any more marijuana licenses in the municipality of Anchorage.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Constant, sir. On the item in front of us.
Yep. I intend to support this license, and just to speak to the counterpoint of my peer, I am hopeful, and it's so funny to be making the states' rights argument, considering our kind of constitutional, where we come from. I believe that the state of Alaska and the city of Anchorage have made substantive investment, thousands and thousands of hours of time in an industry that has proven itself to be a fair operator, and that if we find ourselves on the blunt end of a federal overreach, that we would work with the state to defend the interests of our economic policy.
Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was really trying hard to be very subdued in this discussion because I knew it was coming. And what I find incredibly ironic is when the citizens of Alaska vote for an initiative and they want something, and it's something counter to your political ideology, when the feds come in and nullify it, they're all for it. But when it's something you want and the feds come in and nullify it, then it's a states' rights argument. For me, it's about consistency. I believe in law and order, plain and simple. And under the Controlled Substances Act, which is a federal law, it is very clear, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, though we have half a dozen here, it's very clear that controlled substances are regulated by the federal government. And I said this initially when I introduced the opt-out option. I said the Congress needs to do their job. They either need to change the CSA or they need to take marijuana off the Schedule I list. So when you make the arguments a state rights issue, do your homework and actually look. The FDA regulates, DEA regulates. The Controlled Substances Act is a federal act. They regulate controlled substances. So again, it comes back to, if we want action, our congressional delegation and U.S. Congress really has to do their job, and I believe that to be true. Now, the basis, I sat on this body when this went through, and I can tell you we spent hours and hours and hours going over the Cole memo. Everybody kept saying, this is what our basis is. This is our basis. This is why we're doing it. Even though Congress hasn't acted, this is our basis. The fact of the matter is that basis has been rescinded. So I believe by the Municipal Assembly passing marijuana licenses, you're in violation of federal law. And I I'm just saying, I've gone along with it because the Cole memo was out there and the DOJ indicated, they're going to change it, go for it. But the fact of the matter is that memo is no longer there. So I don't believe you have a basis. Now, is it a states' rights issue? As I indicated, I believe the quickest, easiest, cleanest solution is for Congress, frankly, to change the CSA. And until such time that happens, I clearly see the actions of the Municipal Assembly in violation of federal law, which I believe they have jurisdiction in this particular area. And I am a huge states' rights issue, a states' rights advocate, no question about it. And it's exactly why I believe there's things that we can do. Those things not reserved to the federal government are the responsibility of the states. However, in this particular situation, I believe the federal government has already staked out their claim. Therefore, I didn't want to make this a big deal, but Mr. Constant, you gave me the soapbox, so I took it. Thank you. I will not be voting for these licenses until that's fixed.
Thank you. Other comments from Assembly members prior to voting? Seeing none, please vote. Those approved, the vote was 10-1. Next item in front of us is item 14, our resolution AR 2018-2, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a modification of previously approved special land use permit for Einstein Enterprise LLC as a marijuana manufacturing facility with license number M1082, doing business as Einstein's Lab, located at 2939 Porcupine, Mountain View Community Council.
It's the same one.
Case number 28.0002.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is it possible that we could take up the next two items together, the public hearing?
No.
They're the same operator.
I know, but we're going to take them separately, so we have time. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, crew for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is called, so what's the wish of the body? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Wilton, this one come to your committee too?
We did review this last week at our committee, and we did recommend approval.
Hey, Mr. Croft.
Yeah, I apologize for being somewhat late to the argument that was made before. I didn't expect it. I thought we were doing our normal arguing about signs or distance to schools or other things.
Or whirligigs or something?
Right. It does seem to me that, yes, there's a federal law out there. Whether we believe it's still valid, I think is open. When the federal government wanted to outlaw alcohol in the 1917, but anyway, the late teens, they didn't do it by enacting a law. They had a constitutional amendment. It's a somewhat interesting question whether they could have ever passed a law that says, everybody's had, counties and states have had their own rules on drinking. We're just preempting the whole thing. We're saying no one in the United States can drink alcohol. I don't know whether that would have been constitutional or not. Gun laws that everyone assumed were constitutional have been struck down in the last 10 years.
Who assumes gun laws?
Yeah, there you go.
Let's not get into that unless you're ready to go.
Well, it was going your direction, sir. I mean, it was.
The Constitution is clear on gun rights. Those are absolutely reserved to the public.
Those gun laws had been enforced and were declared unconstitutional, basically on the argument that the government had no right to be in something that is only tangentially affecting interstate commerce. It really was, in effect, boiling a lot of law down, none of the federal government's business. It wasn't an enumerated power. It wasn't anything. So whether they continue to have the right to trump our law that the people enacted, I just don't know. It's continues to be an area that is both uncertain and evolving. But I think we should do what the people that elected us asked us to do. And I intend to keep doing that on these. If they comply with the rules that the people of the state of Alaska and the people of Anchorage have outlined, I'm going to approve them.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Peterson, sir, on this issue in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually took a tour of this facility along with several other members of this body. And I have to tell you, I was immensely impressed. The amount of information that was disseminated in the 20-minute tour had my head spinning. And it's absolutely amazing to me how much knowledge it takes to actually do this correctly. And so I have to applaud all the permittees, but especially this particular one who I have taken the tour and I've been sold. And so I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other comments on this license by Assembly members? If not, please vote. That is approved. The vote was 10-1. Next item in front of us is item 14S, Resolution AR 2018-3, resolution of the Municipal Assembly approving a modification of a previously approved special land use permit for DGF Enterprises, Inc., a marijuana cultivation facility with license number M180080, do business
Waive reading.
Dream Green Farms. Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. And may wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clear for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. The vote is the wish of the body. Moved and seconded, and moved by Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Wilton. Mr. Wilton, this go to your committee too?
This did. We reviewed this last week carefully and recommended approval.
Okay. Comments from Assembly members without getting into the whole federal delegation issue? Mr. Dunbar.
That's what I was going to do. No, I just wanted to say one thing. So this is a statement from October 2015. When asked about whether or not he would rescind the coal memo, this I wouldn't interfere because I think that really is a local issue. When you look at what's happened in Colorado as an example, it's a local issue. I wouldn't interfere with it. I think that's something that really is very much up to the local area. That was then candidate, now President Trump, and he has reversed himself on this issue. I think it's very unfortunate. I agree with Ms. Domboski, actually. I think that the Federal Controlled Substance Act should be amended. It needs to be changed. That is the cleanest way to do it. I think the people of Alaska very much support it. They supported President Trump and the Electoral College partly on that promise. And I believe that they should vote out members that don't make that change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Any other comments relative to this ordinance? Seeing any, please vote. That is approved 10-1.
Mr. Chair, on the next item that comes up, before we open the public hearing, I want to declare a conflict.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Constant.
So on item 14T, it's a rezone, and we went extensively into the conversation about my relationship with my broker as a real estate professional licensed in the state of Alaska. This property that is under discussion abuts directly properties held in development by my broker. And so I believe it's the same exact situation as the discussion about West Park.
Why don't you go take a walk?
Thank you, sir.
Public hearing on item 14T is now open. Ordinance AO 2017-163, an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning of approximately 17.461 acres from PL, Public Lands and Institution District, to R6, low density residential district for Putter Heights subdivision addition number 1, tract C, per tract 2017-24, generally located south of Putter Heights Road and north of Southport Ridge Drive in Anchorage. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clear for the record, and spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in.
My name is Connie Yoshimura, Yoshimura, and I live in the South Addition. I am the managing member of Potter Creek Development LLC. I hope that you have all received my email with photos, but I would like to read my comments into the public record.
Go ahead.
Potter Creek Development has been building home sites in the Potter Creek area for the past 20 years. Our most recent effort was the development, including the simultaneous rezone and plat of the Potter Highlands section, which required the submission of a wide range of data demanded by the MOA staff prior to submission to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The packet for our rezone alone was 151 pages, case 2011-032, and the accompanying platting packet, case S11864, was 382 pages. The application before you tonight appears incomplete in comparison to what the MOA requires of private developers. As a former chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it has always been my recommendation that a major rezone over 5 acres be accompanied by a preliminary plat because it is in the best interest of the neighboring community to be made aware as what is being planned in their backyard. When we rezoned our property from R3SL to R6, we were confronted with the issue of the secondary egress, which is the improvement of the so-called Finland Street, which is in fact an old section line easement combined with a utility easement, and I've included photos. This marginal dirt road is not maintained, nor is it always within the section line easement. And as an alternative to improvement of the secondary egress, a financial burden that we could not undertake by ourselves as private developers was to require the sprinkling of any development more than 30 homes. My question is, will this proposed property owned by the Heritage Land Bank be required to have the homes sprinklered, or will they improve the access road? I believe these issues should be resolved before any rezone is approved. The main obstacle in the development of this so-called secondary egress is the crossing of Potter Creek, which is now in parts outside the section line easement. The cost of building a new bridge or crossing that would meet the expensive requirements of the MOA and the Anchorage Fire Department are very high and not cost-effective for any developer, private or public. Potter Creek Development has explored state assistance for this only to have it vetoed by a former governor. Our property borders the proposed rezone. How ironic it would be if our homes would be sprinklered but back up to homes that are not. We have suggested at the Rabbit Creek Community Council that if the municipality opens this land for development, then it needs to take the responsibility for the secondary egress and put it in its 5-year capital budget and request state assistance to improve Finland Street and the required bridge or crossing so that it can handle the additional traffic that will result in the development of this tract and others. We do not oppose placing these 17.46 acres in private ownership. We do not oppose the development of this tract consistent with MOA requirements, and we believe that the MOA must take responsibility for the upgrade of Finland, placing it in their capital budget request, as this upgrade would be a benefit to the entire Upper Hillside community. To approve this rezone without addressing the issue of secondary egress is not in the long-term best interests of the Upper Hillside. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Questions from Ms. Yoshimura? Mr. Wilton, sir.
A couple questions. So my understanding with Potter Highlands, Finland was not accepted as suitable as a secondary egress for your development.
That is correct.
Okay, but with this property, Finland is the access to it. Is that correct?
That is correct, and there's no definition of improvement to my knowledge.
Okay. And Finland's got, for those who don't know it, it is a very rough dirt road, and it takes a big dip down as you climb your way back up to Golden View. So it would not be a simple fix. And is there, are you aware of any estimates for making that municipal standards?
I am not, sir. I believe at one point in time it was estimated to be about $1.2 million. But the issue is where the road is not where the right-of-way is. And so there are homes and driveways that are very, very close to the right-of-way.
So there's many issues there. It's not in the right
Yes.
place, very common in that area.
Yes.
And it goes up and down a hill, also fairly common there.
Yes.
Okay. Then with the sprinklers, you did sprinklers because you did not have a secondary egress, so they...
That is correct. That was required by the municipality. The fire department determined that all of Potter Creek all of the various developments that come off of Potter Valley Road were part of one development, even though they were individually tracked, had individual names, and were platted at different periods of time. So they said that as a result of that, our acreage at the top of Potter Valley Road was part of Potter Creek, and therefore we could not have more than 30 homes without sprinkling. But as you know, Girdwood, there are various communities in the municipality that have only one egress.
And could I, do you mind, Chair, if I follow up?
Go ahead,
a couple more? Going up Potter Valley Road, I think you have a development on the right-hand side. I don't remember what it's called, but it's much
Yes.
smaller than Potter
Yes.
Highlands. What is that one?
Potter Bluff, and then there's Potter View and Potter Glen. So we've done 3 other developments before we went to,
And one of them required sprinklers, didn't it?
no.
Is that right? None of those required sprinklers.
Well, the phase, the last phase that we put in, which were 9 lots this past year, is the first one that we have to sprinkler.
In Potter Highlands, or?
In Potter Highlands,
Okay.
yes, that's correct.
But the ones that go off of Potter Valley Road lower down the hill, those were not
No,
required?
they do not require sprinklers. They're all part of a community water system, actually, with a community water system and public sewer
Right.
and publicly dedicated roads.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. No other questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Welcome to the meeting.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Wilber, W-I-L-B-E-R, and I am with Kittleson and Associates and representing the Heritage Land Bank. Before I begin, I really do want to clarify that this parcel does indeed have legal and physical access from Potter Heights Drive. As a matter of fact, the Heritage Land Bank did a platting action in 2016, and a parcel cannot be platted without legal and physical access. Finland is a utility right-of-way, and that is not part of this. I would also like to remind the Assembly that a platting action is very different than a rezone action per the code. So a rezone action is really identifying future density. It does not say what will happen exactly on that parcel, but only how much development can happen on that parcel. So if this rezone goes through, any future development would have to go through a subsequent municipal platting action, and that is where you talk about density sprinkling secondary egress. There is no proposed development on this, and according to Title 21-03-160, we are not required to submit a plat as part of a rezone, and I've represented many private developers who have done a rezone and done a future plat and development. Often, the developer will come in with both at once because it saves time. I would also like to tell this board that I've been doing this for 25 years. And at the risk of offending anyone, I have never had the Rabbit Creek Community Council support a rezone action, and they did. There has been no opposition to this rezone. This rezone has been on the books since 1999 in the Potter Valley Land Use Plan. It has been identified as low-density residential, which is R6, which is what we're proposing. That was also included in the Hillside District Plan. This has been on the books for 20 years. The Heritage Land Bank took about a 40-acre parcel and did an initial plat, and they dedicated parkland, about 4 acres. They dedicated public right-of-way, which is the extension of Potter Heights Road, so that future development to the east can happen, and they dedicated open space. I would challenge you to find a private developer that is required to dedicate almost half of their property to park and open space as part of their development. So I would argue they are indeed being held to the same stringent standards that private developers are. Planning and Zoning Commission also unanimously approved this project, as did the planning staff with no conditions. Every parcel around is zoned R6. This is consistent with all the plans. We have met all the standards in 21-03-160, and we urge your approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wilton, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we have not heard anyone speak against this rezone even this evening. It is well supported. But I think some very, very important issues have been brought up. And as you know, in this area, the access it's all about access. How do you get up there? You get up, I mean, these are not spectacular roads, and I understand, and I've said on this body before, a rezone is just a rezone. It's not the plating action, so we should really just look at it as a rezone. So I wonder, in your experience, though, you can do, if you do conditional use, it's all about special limitations. That's kind of what conditional uses are. And plating boards can have all kinds of plat notes and so on. There are some issues in here that when it goes to plating, we should make certain are addressed. And is there a way through a rezone to put special limitations or a comment or so on?
Well, this actually came up at the Rabbit Creek Community Council, and we discussed it extensively. And under the old code, you would see a lot of special limitations. Under the new Title 21 rewrite, there are so many additional restrictions in terms of steep slopes, in terms of secondary access, covered in the plating, that even the Rabbit Creek Community Council understood that through Title 21 and the code rewrite, all of those conditions are addressed. And at this point, we don't know, a developer could potentially buy this and put 2 houses on it. They could buy it and put, maybe you could get 10 houses on it. We're not talking a very large development by the time you take into Title 21 the natural resource protection, the steep slope ordinances and things. So it's well covered in our new code, and as you know, the plating requirements are very, very strict. And I have sat at many plating board meetings, and if we can't resolve secondary access, it won't be developed. Or, as Ms. Yoshimura said, you will have to sprinkle those homes. So those same standards will be on this parcel when a future development comes forward.
Mr. Wilton.
I'd like to follow up because it is not the same standards, and this is something I'm worried about. And it's not in this particular case, which is so overt, but what we have is for safety, which really makes sense, is you got a way in, you want another way out in case there's wildfire. How are you getting out of there? And this particular valley is very vulnerable. So if you have a development of 30 or more units, you have to have a very solid, valid secondary access out of there, or you have to do something to mitigate, which was, I think, sprinkling. There's maybe other cases, things, you build them all out of concrete or something, I don't know. But if you do less than 30, you don't have to worry about the secondary access. You don't have to worry about the sprinklers and so on. It seems odd. So what if you did 6 or say, 3 10-home units? I'll let you in a second. If you did 3 10-unit developments, they wouldn't have those restrictions. But if you have someone do a 30-unit, they do. And if we're looking at safety, safety is safety. I mean, we have so many homes now up Potter Valley Road with really one way out that's really legitimate by any kind of municipal standards. And we keep increasing that. If you increase it 10 at a time, you get yourself in a pickle. But if you do a 30 at a time, you have much bigger hoops to go through. And I don't want to give up on the safety, but it also seems unfair that the smaller developments totally aren't affected by that. I'm correct, aren't I?
I don't think you are correct, because when this goes through the plating process, the future developer will have to upgrade the roads and will have to address all of these issues. And it will go through a full public process and go to the plating board for review. So all of the issues you're bringing are completely valid. But this rezone action is about density and what is the future development. It is really, in part, implementing our 2040 land use plan. It's implementing our Hillside District plan. And we have to go back as far as 1999 to the Potter Valley Land Use Plan that said this should be R6 residential. And as a matter of fact, every parcel abutting this is R6 residential. And so it's just bringing everything into alignment. It doesn't say that the development can happen. So a future developer is going to have to come through, and they're going to have to identify the wetlands. They're going to have to identify the road improvements. They're going to have to do a traffic study. They're going to have to do soils investigations. They're going to have to look at septic and water. And that's when you prove all that out. And you prove that out based on what they propose. And so until that future developer comes forward, we really don't know what that looks like. And it could be very different if it's 10 houses or 5 houses. And so that's really where the plating action comes in. And that's where all of the 500 pages that have to be submitted come in.
Mr. Wilton.
I'll speak more after the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved in second. Moved by Mr. Whittleton, second by Mr. Peterson. Discussion. Mr. Whittleton.
Well, I would repeat, rezone is a rezone, only a rezone. And I think that's what we're looking at here. And it is supported by our plans. It makes sense for that area. This should be rezoned. A couple of points, though, super important that Ms. Yoder brought up, and we've heard in many other developments in the area, is this secondary access. And I am concerned, one, somewhat fairness. Smaller development, it's not an issue, but if you do a big one, it is an issue. And I would say the bigger ones tend to have better roads. We've got an amazing, Potter Highlands is tremendous. It has a great pathway. They're able to do things on their development that a smaller development can't. Just because it's bigger and they have more money to work with. And it creates an unfairness when the smaller developments create the same safety issue as the bigger ones, but don't have the hurdles to deal with. We also have issues on the roads there is who will fix Finland? We can't do it as a city. You can't put it in Ardslebon because it is way outside of the Anchorage Road Drainage Service Area. It is, I don't even believe, it might not even be in a limited road service area. So there really is no money to come up with $1 million or so to fix this road. So that entire Potter Valley will have no true secondary safety exit if there's a wildfire. It doesn't now, and until we get state money to do it, we're in a real pickle there. And a little bit tangential to this, we're looking at a rezone on one spot here, but the HLB replatted to create parkland as part of this lot. This is outside of the Parks and Rec service area. Now, it's true that the Potter Valley Land Use Plan said that should be park, the Hillside District Plan said that should be park, but we put something to a vote. And it got shot down, I think, very short-sightedly and wrongly, to not expand the Parks and Rec service area to this area. And we should not be creating parkland in this area. They voted no, and that's where it should be. And I think that trumps the Potter Valley Land Use Plan and the Hillside District Plan. We got a new rule. I think it was, I don't support the direction that was chosen, but that's where we are. And that's a separate issue, but I felt I had an opportunity to make that point.
Thanks,
So,
Mr. Whittleton.
but I do support it is a rezone, and it is a sensible one.
Thank you, Mr. Whittleton. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So I remember, John, that this is one of the questions about the park being outside the district. You asked that of the administration, and they provided an answer. But I admit that I didn't read it with the depth of knowledge that you understand on this. Is there someone here who helped put together that answer that could explain a little bit more into the record?
Robin?
And then, so John, my understanding is you still intend to support this even though you think that is a major issue?
Well, I have always thought rezone's a rezone, and this one makes sense, but there are a lot of tangential issues in this thing, and if Ms. Domboski can jump on her soapbox, I jumped on mine. So.
Thank you. Ms. Ward, would you mind providing that answer that you provided to John?
Certainly, Mr. Dunbar, through the chair. We did do a plotting action. We did follow the recommendations of the Potter Valley Land Use Analysis, and it did ask that the Panhandle portion along Finland be set aside for a future park. We will be holding that property in HLB until hopefully someday a vote will bring that into the Park Service District. But until that point in time, we have set it aside. It will be for future recreation purposes, but we're not putting park on it as a label. The other thing we did while we were doing that platting action, because of the municipality, we did dedicate 30 feet on that recreational HOB portion property for Finland. Because today it does run down through a section line. It does, people are driving on a utility easement. So in the future, hopefully again in the future, there is 30 feet of dedicated right-of-way on the municipal parcel for that. But we will just hold that in HOB.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I add one clarification too?
I'd like to, ma'am.
Yes, I want to be clear that we have a specific parcel for a rezone before this board, and to take up other parcels that are not part of this rezone action would not be something that you would typically see. We wouldn't ask a developer who owns adjacent property and start questioning the development on that one. So I do want to caution the Assembly that there is a single parcel before this board.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, on this issue in front of us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to ask Robin if some of the area that we might be designating as park is currently considered wetlands.
Mr. Peterson, through the chair, that is actually an upland parcel of about 8 acres. It's a gorgeous piece of land, but it's not actually wetlands. But there are some wetlands that have already been identified in the parcel that is being considered for rezone tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Other comments from Assembly members before we take action? Seeing none, please vote. Mr. Constant, I need your vote, sir. Okay, that's right. He took a break. No, he can't vote.
Okay, sorry.
It's my fault. Sorry. Okay, that is approved. The vote was 9-1. That was approved.
To the chair, can I point out?
Welcome back, Mr. Constant.
Sorry, Mr.
We missed you.
Mr. Trini, it shouldn't have been 9-1. I voted yes instead of abstain on mine.
Madam Clerk, would you let the record reflect that Ms. Dabowski wants to be reflected as yes vote?
Or maybe I misread it, but I thought by my name it said an A.
It did.
Okay.
It did.
I voted yes.
She voted yes, so the vote was 10 yes and 0 no's. Thank you.
To the chair?
Sir?
Can we take about 5 minutes before this last issue so I can talk to the planning department about it?
We're taking a break.
We have 2 issues left, though.
We got a great, we're running fine.
Oh, well, we could.
We're taking a 5-minute break.
Kind of. Enough to proceed.
We got,
What?
what is it?
I mean, I wanted to go kick some ass, but in the end, other than his snarky letter,
What's the- I don't know where Mr. Wilton is. John, that was a long 5 to 8 to 10 minutes. Hope you got what you needed.
Okay, I'd like to reorder the agenda to put this last. I understand we have another issue that will take us about 15 minutes and give the
No,
planning
it's not going to
department
take
time.
15 minutes.
Just talk slow and get on our soapboxes.
Mr. Constant,
I don't know why you looked at me.
I looked down the aisle.
let's go back to your issue. We were dealing with
It's
a liquor license.
9D12,
Oh, that's right.
Part B.
9D12 Part B.
Yep. It's license, gaslight license number
Yes, sir.
437. So I would move to approve that licenses for this, from the packet.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
And through my
Mr.
discussion.
Constant, could you tell me why we should approve this?
Yeah, through my discussions with the administration, they did some background research and found that, at least to the satisfaction of our public safety team and the mayor's office, that this issue had been resolved. And so it's in the interest of good commerce and not being arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, it makes sense to move this one forward.
Okay. Other comments from Assembly members? Seeing none, please vote. That is approved, 11 to nothing. We're now down to our last item. Mr. Wilton, before I start the public testimony, anything you would like to say?
Sure, why not? I think as we get over, there is some convoluted wording in the presentation of this R3A that the staff is working to correct right now, or to improve. And it would take them a few minutes because we don't want to do a bad job with it. There is some issue on getting this done tonight because there are developers with interesting projects beneficial to the city who are waiting on this, and given that it's January, even a 2-week delay puts off their submitting documents and so on, and pretty quick you move them into 2019 instead of 2018. So if you want to open it, see if there's any testimony, perhaps discuss other issues, or find out what Ms. Dombosky wants.
Testimony, and then we can wax philosophical for a while and talk about state rights.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Dombosky, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to change the order of the day and take up Assembly member comments.
That'll work too. Any objection to that? Seeing none, let's take up Assembly member comments. Mr. Dyson, any comments, sir?
No.
Ms. Dombosky, any comments, ma'am?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As many have probably seen the headlines earlier this, or late last week, actually, a homeowner in Eagle River was shot. When he heard something outside of his door, he stepped outside, and he was shot in the stomach. Of course, I've had communications with his mother-in-law, and he's out of ICU, but he is going to have a long road to recovery. So, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with him. But I want to take a moment to thank all of the Anchorage Police Department, the officers, the dispatchers, the staff. We've had a significant, what seems to be an uptick in Chugiak Eagle River. We've had a number of armed robberies. We've had clearly a shooting. I've had my own little close encounter earlier this last week. And I know with the number of responses we've had to Eagle River, I've heard from residents, I've heard from firefighters that APD's response has been on point. They have been quick to respond, which is challenging. Many don't know, but my district only has 3 assigned police officers, usually 2 in Eagle River and 1 in Chugiak. So if you have something happen, it's not unusual for it to take 20 minutes to get 2 officers to respond and be near you. So, but clearly APD is recognizing the trend shift in our district, and they have it seems they have been staffing accordingly. But I can tell you from public safety officials and residents that have been on some of these calls or that have been the victims or neighbors, they are responding with incredible optimism as to APD's professionalism and how quickly they're responding. Just yesterday, there was an armed robbery in East Anchorage, Mr. Dunbar's district and Mr. Peterson's district, and the suspects were spotted multiple times and had ditched the stolen vehicle right there in downtown Eagle River. So it has definitely been a very, very active couple of weeks in my district, and I just really wanted to take the time and point out how grateful the residents of our community are and how fantastic our men and women in blue truly are in this community. We recognize you have a tough job. We recognize you're going from call to call to call to call, and I didn't want it to go unnoticed.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir, Assembly comments.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Peterson, Assembly comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even though the members of the Nordic Ski Club aren't here right now, I just wanted to let them and all the rest of the volunteers that helped out there over the weekend or the last week or so to be prepared for that. I mean, I'm sure they've probably been preparing for that event for a year or longer, and maybe 2 years. It's just an amazing event, came off without a hitch. All the praying that was going on for snow worked out because the 4 inches of snow we got came just in time. And so it turned out to be an amazing event. And the fact that Alaskan skiers ended up on the top of the podium was just, it was just extra. It just made it even better yet. So we have a fantastic facility there. Many people here in Anchorage may not realize that that is a world-class cross-country ski facility out there, and we should all be very proud of them and all of our Alaskan skiers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Croft, sir, Assembly comments.
No comments.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So I, again, want to acknowledge the Nordic Ski Club, the Nordic Ski community, and I know that we are all very thankful that that very large $2 million of business, that event was held here in Anchorage. We've had a number of events, actually, in the last few years that we've all been aware of. There was an adventure tourism conference at the Denina Center last year that was really tremendous, brought people from all over the world to Anchorage. And we continue to grow as a ski community. Fat Tire Bike, we're becoming one of the centers of the country. And this brings me to something that I'm worried about, and that is a ballot initiative that is on the ballot in April that I'm worried will put Anchorage on the map for the wrong reasons and discourage some of these kind of national, international meetings and tournaments and events from coming to Anchorage. And that is Proposition 1. Some people call it the Bathroom Initiative, the Bathroom Bill. And it's true that these events came to Anchorage before we had an anti-discrimination ordinance. But as we've seen in places like North Carolina and Indiana, when you go out of your way to reverse these kind of gains, you send a signal to these communities that we are not open for business and that we are not a safe place for certain members of the community to come and enjoy these kind of activities. So I just want to put that on the record because we had this tremendous group with us today and they didn't speak to it directly, but I'm worried that if the the bathroom bill passes, we will risk Anchorage no longer being a destination for those kind of world-class events. Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Thank you. Mr. France, ma'am, Assembly comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share Mr. Dunbar's concerns as well.
Mr. Steele, Assembly comments.
I'll sign on to that, too.
Mr. Rivera, Assembly comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dunbar stole my thunder there.
I'm sorry, Felix. I didn't know.
It's all good. So I completely agree with Mr. Dunbar, and we need to take note and be very careful as we vote by mail starting in a few weeks. Thank you.
Mr. Wilton, sir.
I think I used up my allocation.
We're trying to delay it for you, sir. You said delay, okay?
Well, we'll see. They may be okay, and we could open it up. I have one very small amendment, and then we'll see where they are.
Do you have any Assembly comments, sir?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we could do public comment this time as well.
Mr. Dyson.
Mr. Dyson, assembly comment, sir?
Yeah, so Proposition 1 does nothing about the ordinance that you all passed before I got here that says no discrimination in job, housing, and so on and so forth. And it only talks about the aims at the problem of people who misuse the implication that this body passed, that any given day you can choose your gender and can use that illegitimately for nefarious purposes. It is indeed nothing to do about discrimination or the condemnation of anybody's position or where they're at with gender ambiguity physically or emotionally. It only has to do with protecting privacy and the assumption that women particularly and girls can go into the restroom or shower room and with the assurance that there won't be people there of the opposite sex. I think it's an absolute and, in my view, well, unfortunate to say that this has to do with discrimination or prejudice at all. And I think there's only a half a dozen jurisdictions in the nation who have gone down the road that we as a city have done. So I take a significant exception with some of the comments that were made here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Just one last comment from me relative to this issue. If you're using your assembly email, do not send assembly email on this issue advocating for or against people voting. Use your private email, because otherwise using city assets to cue an election or skew an election. So please do not do that. Otherwise, we'll probably see you in front of the ethics board. So please don't do that, okay? Other comment I have is I want to thank whoever it was that I have a son-in-law that's principal at College Gate Elementary, and they had an individual going around trying to break in the building. He then started breaking windows out and throwing flares, road flares in the building. They had a fire, lost $100,000 from property. No one was hurt. But some of the neighbors found out what he was doing, so I'm going to get the name of those neighbors and bring them in here. Because in today's day and age, we've got to have the public involved in something like this. Mr. Constance, sir.
Yep, thanks. Since that can was opened, I think there's a perspective we haven't yet heard, and that's the civil libertarians' perspective. I think there are a number of us on this body who have probably great aunts and uncles, grandparents who died in Germany, in Europe, in the 1940s. And the idea that we as a city are, by the vote of the people, going to be demanding you present your birth certificate at the door of the bathroom provides to me a pretty scary move towards a police state in an environment in which I hope we don't find ourselves in, because I certainly don't carry my birth certificate, and I don't think it's prime to request that of anyone as they're trying to do the thing that we all have to do. You know, this is, to me, a basic civil liberties issue. It doesn't have to do with all those other things.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just keep my comment brief. I'd be more than happy to invitation to Mr. Dyson to have coffee with him and talk more about this subject. And then second, Mr. Dyson made an incorrect statement when he stated that only 12 jurisdictions have passed similar laws. That was passed in Anchorage. In fact, over 200 cities around the nation have done so. Probably higher than that, actually. But again, I'd be more than happy to sit down and have coffee with you, Mr. Dyson.
Okay, we're going to end the testimony and discussion on this item before we break down. Mr. Dyson, sir?
Yeah, no one has ever said you're going to have to present your birth certificate and so on, and I understand the enthusiasm, but that's an outrageous putting words in somebody else's mouth and conflating the issue. Anyways, thank you, and I'd be glad to accept you and Mr. Constant.
And Mr. Wilton, thank you for this diversion. We're about to get off of this train, I'm sorry. I will tell the body, though, I was going through Seattle, I picked up a Seattle Times newspaper. It seems now in Washington State you can choose sex of the child at birth, male, female, or other. They now have a third category. Do we want to go to that discussion? Mr. Middleton.
So we're on.
We're going on to
ahead.
this.
We are ready.
Here.
So if we go ahead and
Well,
open
public
this.
testimony now, item 14U, ordinance 2017-176, ordinance amending municipal code, chapter 21.30, review and approved procedures 21.04, zoning districts 21.05, use regulation 21.06, dimensions and standard measurements 21.07, development and design standards, and 21.08, subdivision standards in order to create an R3 residential district, R3A, residential district use district. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name and for the record. Spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Public hearing is now open. If anybody wishes to testify on this item. If we didn't bore you completely. Hearing and seeing none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Whittleton, second by Mr. Peterson. Mr. Whittleton.
Okay, I have two amendments. I will start with the very, very small one first, and then we'll get to the one the planning staff was working on. And the first one would be on our packet page 797. Actually, both are on this page, 797. That's also page 9 of 22. And line 11. I'd move to replace the word value with importance.
I'm sorry, the value with what?
Importance.
Importance?
Right.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Okay,
Second.
That's a motion. Second. I read
Now,
this.
is this typed?
I do not have this typed,
Okay.
but that's just one word.
I know, I just want to make sure the clerk understands the word, sir.
Okay. All right.
Let's wait for her to catch up to us. You got it? Okay. Please continue, John.
And just speaking of this may seem fairly unimportant, but it says it would, for a site plan review, it would take into account the value of the view. And when I look at value, I'm looking for a dollar amount. And that's not really we don't want to get into that. But you say the importance of the view carries the same meaning, but I don't think someone would come forward and say, wait a minute, I want to know a dollar value for that. So I think it gets us the same place without getting us stuck with someone who's going to really nitpick the definition of the word.
Okay. Is there a second on that amendment?
I second it.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment, other than Mr. Whittleton's. Mr. Peterson, on that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if Robin Ward might want to step in and tell us what she thinks of that one-word amendment.
Robin's always good for that.
I saw that she was still here, so.
She's here.
Mr. Peterson, through the chair, I tend to agree with Mr. Weddleton. When maybe it's just my expertise in real estate, but when I see value, it has dollar signs with it. I would say the word either importance or significance, something like that would differentiate between a dollar and then I don't want to say feeling, but like I said, either importance or significance of the view rather than value. I agree with you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Fantastic, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from assembly members? Ask concurrence on this amendment, this change. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, we've adopted that. Mr. Whittleton, your second one?
All right, the second one, and this is on the same page. This begins, the sentence that begins on line 29. So the last sentence of that paragraph, small v, 5. I'd like to replace that sentence with the following. For each of the 4th through 6th stories, the total gross floor area of the floor plate, parentheses S for plural plates, of the building, parentheses S for plural, on the site is limited to a maximum of 25% of the lot area.
Now, do you have that in written form?
I have that in written form.
Good. Please pass it to the clerk.
Okay.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Discuss that, Mr. Wilson?
This says what they mean more clearly. It doesn't really change the intent. And the broad intent there is that you wouldn't have big, bulky buildings in R3A. You'd have something that was more suitable for the neighborhoods that these would be put in. So it's a reasonable requirement, and it just says more clearly what the staff intended.
Okay. Ms. Dubowski, on that amendment, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, I'm trying to visualize in my mind, it seems like that's a substantial change, 50% to 25%. Can you, very visual, so can you kind of break it down for me, what the practical implication would be? Like, are you saying like, can you help me?
Yeah, I'll help you. And I think the way you phrase that shows why this change was made, because it's what it says here is 50% of 50%, which is what? 25%. So instead of saying that, we just said 25%. So we did not change that.
Okay.
But the idea here is that instead of big, as you went taller, it wouldn't maintain its bulk. If you're going to make a taller building, you're going to narrow its footprint somewhat. And that's appropriate in the places that R3A would be allowed.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, on the amendment in front of us.
Thank you. And this is also a follow-up question for you, Mr. Weddleton. You say the 4th through 6th floor. My neighbors have been terrified that this means a 9-story building that's 100 feet tall. This is the end of the world is coming. Does this restrict then the height to 6 floors?
In terms of feet, it says 70 feet. And with the way we build now, that's essentially 6 floors. So by right, you get 3 floors. They call it 40 feet because that bottom floor can be a little bit higher. It typically would, particularly if you have commercial in it. But you're talking basically by right is 3 floors, 40 feet, and then you can do 3 above that. But you have to meet certain, you have to meet this requirement, but you have to meet a certain other incentives before you could.
Which is the affordable housing and the other elements.
Right, you pick one off.
Yeah, underground parking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, you're still in the queue. Any comments?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Comments from assembly members before we vote on this amendment? Please vote on the amendment. Those approved 11-0.
Point of order. The header of that amendment didn't comport with what we just voted on. It was actually the content of the previous vote.
I know, but it was what we voted on. The clerk's got it. It just didn't catch up to it.
Okay, thank you.
Constant. John, would you get your amendment in typewritten form to the clerk, please?
Typewritten? Can I give you this very neatly handwritten? Thank you. I didn't write it, or I would have given it to you in typing.
Any other amendments, John, to this item?
No, I'm good. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments on this particular document from assembly members?
I have a comment.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Just very briefly, I want to thank planning staff for all the work they've done on this. This has been a long time coming. Went to planning and zoning, was approved. I think it comports with this body's desire and the administration's desire to see more flexible types of development and infill development and housing and that kind of thing going forward. So I just want to applaud staff, and I urge approval.
Okay. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. In my discussions with folks involved in development, I heard from most of them that, well, this isn't really all that big of a deal. And from my neighbors, the concerns have always been, wait, you're going to try to thrust commercial uses into our residential neighborhoods. And the title R3A scared a lot of people for whatever reason, irrationally, because when you propose to them the actual uses that are proposed under the R3A zone, they were all for it, and in fact unanimous behind it. And so I'm really grateful for the planning department for getting this and moving it through all of the extensive process it had to go through, and I also urge your support.
Any other comments from assembly members? Seeing none, we're going to vote on this thing. Please vote.
Nope, I did.
You're fast.
No. No, well, I mean...
It's approved 11-0.
No, it's...
What?
I had already voted when it came up.
There we go.
Okay. What's your point? Madam Clerk? It's recorded?
I hit reset if we want to.
Okay, if you want to, you hit reset. It's not on mine. I'd have to hit it again. Please vote slowly. There, the vote was 11-0. That is approved, as amended. We're now down to special orders. There are none. On this participation, is there anybody under item 17 that wishes to address the submit any issue that we haven't dealt with tonight? You have 3 minutes. Not seeing anybody moving on, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. And we got out of here before 9 o'clock.